Chapter 1581. Although the Emperor Jar was now incomplete, it had always been Chu Fengmian's most important trump card. With the help of the Emperor Jar, Chu Fengmian had resolved countless dangers. Although the news of the emergence of an extreme immortal artifact fragment had long spread throughout the Daluo star field, Chu Fengmian had never discovered it. The fragments of the Emperor Jar would attract each other. Now, the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's body had suddenly awakened and guided Chu Fengmian. This also meant that Chu Fengmian could find the fragment of the Emperor Jar with this guidance. And the direction that the Emperor Jar was pointing, Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked in the direction that it was pointing. It was the direction that Chu Fengmian had to go. Could it be that the fragment of the Emperor Jar is in the Immortal Emperor Cave? Chu Fengmian was surprised. The direction was too coincidental. There shouldn't be such a coincidence. Chu Fengmian didn't find it strange that the fragment of the Emperor Jar was hidden in the Immortal Emperor Cave. After all, Chu Fengmian had once obtained one of the fragments of the Emperor Jar in the House of Storms. The House of Storms was the cave left behind by the immortal Venerable Kanglan, and there was a fragment of the Emperor Jar in his cave. The owner of the Immortal Emperor Cave had once obtained a fragment of the Emperor Jar and put it in the cave. It was very likely. It seems that I have to go into the Immortal Emperor Cave. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. It wasn't just because of the Immortal Emperor's treasure, but also because of the fragment of the Emperor Jar. It was worth the risk. The Immortal Emperor Cave was located in the center of the Crimson Continent. Chu Fengmian and Emperor Yen shuttled through the Crimson Continent. Soon, a dazzling seven-colored light shot into the sky. Chu Fengmian could still see the seven-colored sunglow clearly even though it was 2,000 miles away from him. He could even feel the surging spiritual power contained in the seven-colored light. A seven-colored light that covers 2,000 miles. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but exclaim when he saw the seven-colored light. In this Crimson Continent, all the treasures that were opened would appear along with the light. The larger the range of the light, the more precious the treasures were. A treasure trove that could cover an area of 50 kilometers in rainbow light was enough to be called a large treasure trove. For example, when the Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestors Cave was opened, the seven-colored light that appeared was enough to cover an area of 100 miles. All the cultivators within 50 kilometers could clearly see the seven-colored light. The light in front of them was actually 2,000 kilometers long. As expected of an immortal emperor's abode. Even if this treasure trove wasn't an immortal emperor immortal cave, it wasn't far from it. Let's go over there. The Yen Emperor glanced at it, then flew towards the center of the rainbow light. As Chu Fengmian approached the rainbow-colored light, he felt countless powerful auras. Waves of heaven and earth power soared into the sky. This uncontrollable power of heaven and earth was the power of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. In a short moment, Chu Fengmian discovered 7 or 8 Emperor Gu scattered in the vicinity. They weren't even close to the center. As for the 7 tribulations Emperor Gu, 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, and even true emperors, they were everywhere. Chu Fengmian could see hundreds of them at a glance. This was only a small portion. The closer they got to the center of the seven-colored light, the more Chu Fengmian sensed the experts. How many experts have come to the 9 domains this time? Chu Fengmian exclaimed in his heart. Although Emperor Gu wasn't rare in the Daluo star field, it was rare for several Emperor Gu to appear together. But now, Chu Fengmian sensed that there were more than 100 Emperor Gu. If he hadn't come here, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have believed that so many Emperor Gu had come to the 9 domains. At the same time, Chu Fengmian secretly rejoiced that the goal of these Emperor Gu was the treasure in the Omega Ruins Heaven, and not the other 9 domains. Otherwise, with so many Emperor Gu, the 9 domains would be turned upside down. Even the 7 major sects of the 9 domains wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of so many Emperor Gu. There should be a few hundred Emperor Gu in the Daluo star field, and at least half of them belong to the 4 major sections. However, the ancient emperors of the Daluo star domain are not the only ones who have come to the 9 domains. The ancient emperors of the nearby Yen Luo star domain, Myriad Dragon star domain, Floating Mountain star domain, and even the ancient Pure Land star domain have all come to the 9 domains to compete for the treasures. The Yen Emperor saw the doubt in Chu Fengmian's eyes and explained. The experts of the Pure Land star field had come? Chu Fengmian remembered that the Pure Land star field was the legendary star field where all the Buddhas lived. Buddhism had once flourished in the 9 domains. At that time, the Pure Land sect, a major sect in the 9 domains, was said to have come from the distant Pure Land star field. But later, the Pure Land sect was destroyed, and Buddhism was destroyed as well. Chu Fengmian had only read about Buddhism in ancient books. Buddhism was extremely mysterious, and there were very few records of it in that era. But in the ancient books, the records of Buddhism were very cautious. It was said that Buddhism trespassed and bewitched people's hearts. Many experts in that era had been converted by Buddhism experts and subdued by Buddhism. If he really encountered experts from the Pure Land star field, Chu Fengmian had to be careful. Chu Fengmian and the Yen Emperor flew all the way and gradually came to the center of the 7-colored light. With the Yen Emperor, the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, by their side, no one would find trouble with them. The fight between the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was extremely dangerous. If it was not for the treasure, no one would be willing to fight with a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian and the Yen Emperor went all the way and gradually saw that there was a huge door right below the 7-colored light. This Buddhist temple was supported by 100 white jade pillars. Each pillar was 1,000 feet tall and carved with ancient restrictions. The carvings of the restrictions looked like scriptures. Buddhist temple? It was actually a Buddhist temple? Could it be an expert of the ancient Pure Land sect? Could it be that a Buddhist ancestor was born in the Pure Land sect? It was said that the pinnacle of Buddhism was the Buddhist ancestor. The Buddhist ancestor's strength was enough to be on the same level as the immortal emperor. If it was really a Buddhist temple, then the treasures inside would not be inferior to the immortal emperor cave mansion. Chapter 1582. The door of the Buddhist temple was still closed. It was not the time to open yet. However, as the rainbow light in the sky became more and more dazzling, Chu Fengmian knew that when the rainbow light reached its peak, the Buddhist temple would open. Countless experts were waiting for the opening of the Buddhist temple. No one wanted to start a conflict at this time. If they started a conflict at this time, it would be equivalent to giving up the fight for the treasures in the Buddhist temple. Even Emperor Gu, who had a blood feud with many people, could only wait calmly. Chu Fengmian and Emperor Yen were looking for Qing Meng. Suddenly, a voice appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. Someone was transmitting a message to him. It was a secret sound transmission technique. Chu Fengmian had never seen it before. The voice belonged to a young lady. Chu Fengmian found the voice familiar. There was only one sentence in the voice. "Come and meet me quickly." Immediately, a place 100 miles away appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. Chu Fengmian was surprised. He did not expect something like this to happen. He thought for a while and said, "Emperor Yen, wait here for me." "Yen Emperor, wait for me here for a while. I need to go somewhere first." "Okay. Be careful." Emperor Yen nodded and did not ask any more questions. Chu Fengmian immediately turned into a ray of light. He hid his body and appeared 100 miles away. At first glance, the place 100 miles away was just a desert. However, as Chu Fengmian got closer, the world suddenly turned upside down. Illusion. Someone had set up such an illusion in the desert. Outsiders were unable to see into it. Only those who had obtained permission were qualified to enter it. Stepping into the illusion, Chu Fengmian saw a boundless blue ocean. There was a small island in the middle of the ocean. On this island there was a stone pavilion. Within the stone pavilion, the figure of a young lady stood there. Chu Fengmian looked around. In a flash, he crossed the ocean and stepped into the stone pavilion. "May I know why the Princess of the Sea is looking for me?" Chu Fengmian came to the stone pavilion and asked. The person who had suddenly come to look for Chu Fengmian was none other than the Princess of the Sea, who had traveled with Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi in the caravan of the Tiandu continent. She was later rescued by Chu Fengmian. At that time, the three forces had not completely fallen out with Chu Fengmian, and Chu Fengmian was not willing to kill the innocent. But now, Chu Fengmian was a thorn in the side of the three great powers, and they couldn't wait to kill him on the spot. Chu Fengmian didn't expect the Princess of the Sea to come looking for him at this time. "Hurry up and leave the 9 zones. The people of the three great forces want to kill you." The Princess of the Sea went straight to the point when she saw Chu Fengmian. Right now, the three great factions have already issued a kill order. All the Holy Dragon sect disciples in the Sacred Dragon Secret Dimension are on the must-kill list. You still have time to leave now. "I know about this." Chu Fengmian was stunned when he heard the Princess of the Sea's words. Of course, Chu Fengmian knew that the three major powers wanted to kill him. He had been assassinated countless times. But Chu Fengmian didn't expect the Princess of the Sea to tell him about this. "Then do you know that the three great forces have already invited a half-step to Celestial Realm expert to kill you?" The Princess of the Sea asked again when she heard Chu Fengmian's words. "Half-step to Celestial Realm?" Chu Fengmian's expression changed when he heard the Princess of the Sea's words. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, he wasn't afraid of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. But a half-step to Celestial Realm expert. Unless Chu Fengmian stepped into the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, a half-step to Celestial Realm expert wasn't someone Chu Fengmian could contend with. It was rumored that there were half-step to Celestial Realm experts in the Daluo star field among the 4 major powers. But experts of this level might not appear in the world for thousands of years. He didn't expect the 3 great forces to invite a half-step to Celestial Realm expert to kill Chu Fengmian. It seemed like the 3 great forces couldn't tolerate Chu Fengmian's growth and wanted to kill him completely. "Who is it?" Chu Fengmian couldn't help but ask. "It's the 5 Elements Saber Saint from the Avalon of 5 Elements. The 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster that you killed was his disciple," the Princess of the Sea said slowly. She knew clearly that Chu Fengmian had killed the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster, ancestor by Luo, and the others. With the means of the 3 great forces, they could easily find out everything. The 5 Elements Saber Saint Chu Fengmian had heard of this person in some records in the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension. It was said that he was one of the oldest elders in the Avalon of 5 Elements. He hadn't appeared in the Daluo star field for tens of thousands of years. In many records, it was speculated that the 5 Elements Saber Saint had fallen. But now, it seemed like the 5 Elements Saber Saint didn't fall. Instead, his strength had improved and reached the half-step to Celestial Realm. If the 5 Elements Saber Saint really came to kill Chu Fengmian, it would be extremely troublesome. "Why are you telling me this?" Chu Fengmian suddenly looked at the Princess of the Sea and asked. He and the Princess of the Sea should be enemies. After all, Chu Fengmian had killed many disciples of the Sea Capital with his own hands. Although King Sunflower Sea wasn't killed by Chu Fengmian personally, but by Emperor Yan's hands, Chu Fengmian had contributed to it. "I, Lan Ling, will repay a debt of gratitude. You saved my life last time, so I'm returning it to you this time." After the Princess of the Sea finished speaking, her figure flickered as she prepared to leave. "Thank you." Chu Fengmian nodded. The news that the 5 Elements Saber Saint was going to deal with Chu Fengmian was probably a great secret among the 3 great forces. Even Emperor Gu might not be qualified to know about it. This time, the Princess of the Sea was taking a big risk by telling Chu Fengmian about it. "Tell your father's people that they won't be my enemy in the future. When I destroy the Sea Capital, I'll spare their lives," Chu Fengmian suddenly said. His figure flickered as he soared into the sky and prepared to leave. The Princess of the Sea turned around and heard Chu Fengmian's words. She frowned. You can't even protect yourself, yet you're still boasting. Just as Chu Fengmian was about to leave, another voice suddenly rang out. Be careful when the temple opens. After the Princess of the Sea finished speaking, her figure flickered as she left the illusion and disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's figure flickered as he left the illusion. He was thinking about the Princess of the Sea's last words. Chapter 1583. Be careful when the temple opens? Could it be that the Five Elements Saber Saint was planning to launch a sneak attack at that time? Chu Fengmian suddenly thought of this when he heard the Princess of the Sea. Since the Princess of the Sea dared to take the risk to inform the three forces that she was going to deal with Chu Fengmian, she would not lie. However, the Five Elements Saber Saint was a half-step to the celestial realm. A half-step to the celestial realm was a famous expert recorded in the ancient book. Even if he died in the future, his name would still be recorded in the ancient book. It was enough to be passed down for eternity. A half-step to the celestial realm expert would launch a sneak attack? Even with his dignity, he might not be able to do so. On the other hand, if the Five Elements Saber Saint really launched a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian, it would be extremely dangerous. When the temple opened, all the experts present would focus their attention on the temple. A sneak attack at this time would definitely catch Chu Fengmian off guard. Especially since the Five Elements Saber Saint was a half-step to the celestial realm expert, Chu Fengmian could not compete with him. If he launched a sneak attack, Chu Fengmian might not even be able to react in time and would be killed. Although a half-step to the celestial realm expert had high self-esteem, Chu Fengmian's growth rate had already made the three forces want to kill him. Especially since Chu Fengmian had killed the Five Elements Saber Grandmaster, the disciple of the Five Elements Saber Saint. Perhaps the Five Elements Saber Saint would launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian in order to kill him in one blow. No matter what, I have to be prepared. Chu Fengmian revealed a somewhat grim expression. Regardless of whether or not the Five Elements Saber Saint would launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian, he was still a half-step celestial being. Naturally, Chu Fengmian could not underestimate him. Chu Fengmian pondered as he flew towards the center of the seven-colored light. Brother Chu, you are back? Emperor Yan was still waiting for Chu Fengmian at the same place. When he saw Chu Fengmian flying over, he relaxed a lot. He was worried that Chu Fengmian would encounter an accident after leaving suddenly. There were many experts in the Crimson-Red continent. The three forces saw Chu Fengmian as a thorn in their flesh. If Chu Fengmian was alone, he would be in great danger. Where is Senior? Chu Fengmian flew over and glanced around. Over there. The Yen Emperor pointed in a direction. Chu Fengmian and the Yen Emperor flew all the way until they were less than 10 li away from the Buddhist temple. On a mountain peak not far from the temple, a woman was standing at the peak. She was dressed in green and occupied the entire mountain peak. One had to know that once a Buddhist temple was opened, the closer one was to the Buddhist temple, the higher the chance of entering it first. Within 100 miles, there were hundreds of Emperor Gu gathered here. Even though it was so crowded, the woman was able to occupy an entire mountain peak. No one dared to step into the vicinity of the mountain peak. This was because all the cultivators present could clearly feel the terrifying power of the woman in green. The surging power of the world proved her identity. A Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. No one would be willing to provoke a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, so much so that no one dared to snatch the entire mountain peak from her. Junior brother, Emperor Yen, you're here? The woman in green had her eyes tightly closed. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and looked ahead. She shouted happily when she saw two rays of light approaching. Third Senior. Chu Fengmian replied with a smile. Seeing Qing Meng's cultivation level, Chu Fengmian knew that Qing Meng had successfully entered the realm of Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu through the ancestor Emperor Pill. In this way, Chu Fengmian had 3 Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations on his side. With such strength, Even if some major factions wanted to deal with Chu Fengmian, the three of them would still be a far cry from the five elements Saber Saint. Is second senior not here? Chu Fengmian took a look and saw that Qing Meng was alone. He immediately asked. Long Qianjue's strength was not that of a half-step celestial being, but it was very close. If he was here, even the five elements Saber Saint could easily deal with him. But now, it seemed that Long Qianjue did not come to the Nine Regions with Qing Meng. Second Senior is in seclusion in the Holy Dragon sect. He did not come. Qing Meng saw the change in Chu Fengmian's expression and suddenly came closer. She whispered to Chu Fengmian. Junior, what trouble have you encountered? Yes. Chu Fengmian nodded. In front of Qing Meng and Emperor Yan, Chu Fengmian did not have to hide anything. Moreover, it was impossible for Chu Fengmian to deal with the five elements Saber Saint alone. He would only be courting death. If he wanted to escape from the five elements Saber Saint, he would have to join forces with Qing Meng and Emperor Yan. Let's talk here. Chu Fengmian quietly used his means. The door of Dharma and the ancient bronze gate appeared from Chu Fengmian's body. Soon after, Chu Fengmian set up countless seals and created an independent space above the mountain. Boom, 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 boom. In this independent space, even Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations could not detect the mystery within. Junior, what happened? Qing Meng was also shocked by Chu Fengmian's attack. Then, her eyes became serious. Given Chu Fengmian's character, he was actually so cautious. What he wanted to talk about must be very important. It's like this, Chu Fengmian repeated what the Princess of the Sea had told him. However, he did not mention that the Princess of the Sea was the one who told him. Qing Meng and the Yan Emperor listened carefully. When they heard about the five elements Saber Saint, their faces changed drastically. The five elements Saber Saint was one of the oldest patriarchs in the Avalon of Five Element. His name was well known in the Daluo star field. When they heard that a half-step celestial realm expert wanted to deal with Chu Fengmian, their eyes were filled with shock. They looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Especially the five elements Saber Saint, who had actually disregarded his status to launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian. It seemed that the three major forces were determined to kill Chu Fengmian. They had invited the five elements Saber Saint to deal with Chu Fengmian. They were prepared to kill Chu Fengmian with a single blow and not give him any chance to retaliate. This is no small matter. I'll inform second senior brother now and ask him to come here. Qing Meng said with a serious face. It's too late. The moment the Buddhist temple opens is the moment the five elements Saber Saint launches a sneak attack. Chu Fengmian shook his head when he heard Qing Meng's words. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, the Buddhist temple before him would open in at most a day. Long Qianjue was still in the sacred dragon mystery dimension. Even though he was a half-step celestial realm expert, it would be difficult for him to rush to the Nine Regions within a day. Chapter 1584. It would be too late to ask Long Qianjue to come now. Unless Chu Fengmian gave up on the treasures in the temple and left, the five elements Saber Saint's sneak attack plan would fail. However, Chu Fengmian could not give up the temple. The Emperor Jar fragment was in the temple. Even if Chu Fengmian did not want any of the treasures, he had to get the fragment. Moreover, he could not escape forever. Only by increasing his strength could he truly contend with the three major forces. If he continued to escape, there would be no peace. With the strength of the three of us, we are no match for the five elements Saber Saint even if we join forces. It is impossible to even contend with him. Emperor Yan pondered for a moment and said, I have seen records of the five elements Saber Saint in ancient books. It is said that when he was at the peak of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, he once fought against five Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu alone and was undefeated. Now that this person has stepped into the half-step celestial realm, his strength has increased greatly. If we fight him head-on, we will only die. We can't fight him head-on. As long as we enter the temple, it will not be so easy for the 5 elements Saber Saint to attack. Chu Fengmian also said. Chu Fengmian also guessed. With the 5 elements Saber Saint's identity, he would not come to kill Chu Fengmian alone. Chu Fengmian admitted that he did not have the ability to make a half-step celestial realm expert come to kill him. The 5 elements Saber Saint's real target should be the temple. The treasures in the Buddha's cave mansion were what the 5 elements Saber Saint wanted. The 5 elements Saber Saint was a half-step celestial realm expert. Now, his only goal was to break through to the celestial realm. There were many things in the ancient cave mansion that were of great use to him. Just like the bottle of martial ancestors' blood essence that Chu Fengmian had obtained in the lion tyrant martial ancestors' cave mansion, it contained the power of the celestial realm. For those half-step celestial realm experts who wanted to break through to the celestial realm, that bottle of martial ancestors' blood essence was definitely a treasure that they dreamed of. The 5 elements Saber Master most likely came for the treasures in the Buddhist temple. As for the sneak attack on Chu Fengmian, it was also a matter of convenience. As long as Chu Fengmian could escape the first sneak attack, the 5 elements Saber Saint would definitely snatch the treasure when Chu Fengmian rushed into the Buddhist temple. It was impossible for him to keep chasing Chu Fengmian. At that time, it would not be difficult for Chu Fengmian to escape. However, the most important thing was to escape this first sneak attack. When the temple opens, I'll go in alone first. You guys can go in later. Chu Fengmian pondered for a moment before speaking. Brother Chu, what are you doing? This is too dangerous. The Yan Emperor and Qing Meng's expressions changed when they heard Chu Fengmian's words. The moment such a large treasure trove was opened, countless experts would flock towards it. Countless experts wanted to seize the opportunity and enter it first. Whoever wanted to be the first to enter the cave would be besieged by everyone. Many of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had died under the bombardment of the crowd when they seized the opportunity. If Chu Fengmian rushed in, even if his strength was stronger than many of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's, rushing in under the eyes of hundreds of 9 tribulations Emperor Gu was almost like courting death. There was no need for hundreds of 9 tribulations Emperor Gu to attack. 10% of them would be enough to blast Chu Fengmian into pieces. I'll die anyway. This is my last chance. Besides, I'm 50% sure that I can rush in. Chu Fengmian's eyes showed some determination. This plan was extremely risky, but it was the best plan Chu Fengmian could think of. Instead of waiting here for the 5 elements Saber Saint's sneak attack, it was better to seize the opportunity first. Chu Fengmian's physical body was tough, and the divine tree had undergone a transformation because of the Jianmu branch. It was not impossible for them to seize the opportunity and rush in first. The 5 elements Saber Saint's target is me. He shouldn't make things difficult for the 2 of you. If you encounter danger, you can go to the northern region. I've established a force in the northern region called the Sword Wei Sect. You can go there first, Chu Fengmian said to Qing Meng and Emperor Yan. Once this Buddhist temple was opened, no one knew the dangers inside. Under such chaos, perhaps even the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu could not protect himself. If they encountered danger, as long as they hid in the Sword Wei Sect, the countless sword formations arranged by the Sword Wei Sect would be enough to ward off some danger. It's decided then. Chu Fengmian looked at Qing Meng and wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Chu Fengmian. Then, Chu Fengmian tore open the restriction around. Chu Fengmian looked around. There were many experts hiding in the surroundings. Of course, there were also many 9 tribulations Emperor Gu who did not hide at all. They just stood there. This was the confidence of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. They were not afraid of anyone's schemes. There are more than 39 tribulations Emperor Gu from the 3 major forces. Chu Fengmian took out the God's spying mirror and injected spiritual energy into it. He found that there were more than 39 tribulations Emperor Gu from the 3 major forces within 100 miles. As for the other 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu, who did not belong to the 3 major forces, there were even more. There were more than 109 tribulations, Emperor Gu, gathered within 100 miles. In the Daluo star field, the scene of hundreds of 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu appearing at the same time, had not been seen for tens of thousands of years. Today, in the Crimson Continent, experts were gathered. Of course, many of the 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu, were not even martial artists from the Daluo star field, but experts from other star fields. The Emperor Jar, just as Chu Fengmian scanned the surrounding situation, the Emperor Jar in Chu Fengmian's body suddenly woke up and became restless. This restlessness proved that another fragment of the Emperor Jar had appeared nearby and was attracting Chu Fengmian's Emperor Jar. Chu Fengmian followed the restlessness of the Emperor Jar and looked over. Suddenly, he saw a group of martial artists gathered on another mountain peak. This group of martial artists wore clothes that were very similar. They were obviously from the same force. Among them, the leader was a young man with an arrogant face. It was the group of people from the Yen clan that Chu Fengmian had seen when he first arrived at the Crimson Continent. The leader was the young Master Jun of the Yen clan, Yen Jun. However, compared to the last time he saw them, there were more experts in this group of people from the Yen clan. There were 2 more elders standing behind Yen Junto to protect him. These 2 elders contained strong power of heaven and earth. When they spread out, they suppressed everything. These were the 2 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu. It was because of the aura of these 2 elders that the Yen clan occupied that mountain peak, and no one dared to spy on them. Chapter 1585. The Yen clan was one of the 4 great clans in the Yenluo galaxy. They possessed terrifying strength, and had 2 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu. Among the countless forces in the Crimson Continent, they were considered to be above average. On the mountain peak, when Chu Fengmian saw the people from the Yen clan, Yen Jun also looked in Chu Fengmian's direction. This person is here too. When Yen Jun looked at Chu Fengmian, murderous intent surged in his eyes. The last time they fought with Chu Fengmian, the Yen clan suffered a great loss. Even the god's spying mirror was taken away by Chu Fengmian. After suffering such a great loss, Yen Jun hated Chu Fengmian to the core. However, without the god's spying mirror, it was almost impossible for him to find Chu Fengmian. When Chu Fengmian landed on the mountain peak today, Yen Jun noticed Chu Fengmian's presence. "Young Master Jun, do you want us to kill him?" A few Yen clan disciples saw the murderous intent in Yen Jun's eyes and hurriedly asked, "Don't act rashly. This person is not easy to deal with." Yen Jun waved his hand and immediately spoke to the 2 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu behind him. "2 Supreme Elders, are you a match for those 2? As Yen Jun spoke, he pointed at Emperor Yen and Qing Meng. With his strength, he could naturally see that Emperor Yen and Qing Meng were both 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu. 2 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu and Chu Fengmian might not be weaker than the Yen clan. Because of this, Yen Jun did not dare to act rashly against Chu Fengmian. These 2 are not easy to deal with. The man is called Emperor Yen. He is considered an elite in the Daluo galaxy. However, he has just broken through. I alone am enough to deal with him." One of the old men glanced at the crowd and said, "But that woman is not easy to deal with. She is a disciple of the Holy Dragon sect. Her strength is not inferior to the disciples of the Yenluo sect in the Yenluo galaxy. We can suppress and delay the 2 of them, but we can't spare time to help young Master." Although the major galaxies were far apart, the Yen clan was still one of the major clans in the Yenluo galaxy. They still had some understanding of the elites in the Daluo galaxy. Chu Fengmian was just a newcomer, so they did not know much about him. However, the Yen Emperor and Qing Meng were both experts who had been famous for a long time. The 2 supreme elders of the Yen family naturally knew them. "So, that boy is Sek's disciple?" Yen Jun's Emperor Yen Jun's eyes flashed as if he was considering something. Observing Chu Fengmian's aura, He could tell that Chu Fengmian had made a breakthrough and officially stepped into the Emperor realm. Compared to the last time he fought with Yi Shiwen's strength was probably many times more tyrannical. If the two Nine Tribulation ancient emperors of the Yan clan were unable to deal with Chu Fengmian, the remaining people might be able to suppress Chu Fengmian. However, if he wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, he would need another helper. Junshao, the Mu family is here. At this moment, a Yan clan's disciple suddenly looked at the figures flying in the distance and suddenly spoke. More than a dozen escape lights flew towards the mountain where the Yan clan's members were. The leader was a young man who was about the same age as Yan Jun. Behind him, there was an elder who emitted the power of heaven and earth. He was also a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. The Mu clan's escape lights flew over and all of them landed on the mountain where the Yan clan's members were. They seemed to have joined forces. The Yan clan and the Mu clan have joined forces. The leader is the Mu clan's genius, Mujio. The Yan clan and the Mu clan both belong to the Yanluo galaxy. They are also one of the 4 great clans of the Yanluo galaxy. It's normal for them to join forces. 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. It seems that the Yan clan and the Mu clan have joined forces to come for the treasures in the Buddhist temple. Many cultivators began to discuss among themselves when they saw this scene. Once the Yan clan and the Mu clan joined forces, they would be an extremely strong force. 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, and close to 10 Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu. In the current Crimson Continent, they were already one of the strongest forces besides the Avalon of 5 elements, the Qilin Mountain, and the vast ocean in the Daluo galaxy. Brother Mu, please take a seat. When Yan Jun saw the Mu clan's arrival, a group of Yan clan's disciples made way for him. At the same time, a Yan clan's disciple took out a chair and placed it beside Yan Jun. The leader of the Mu clan did not stand on ceremony and directly sat on the chair. Brother Yan, it seems that it won't be easy to get the treasures in the Buddhist temple this time. The leader of the Mu clan, Mujio, glanced at Yan Jun and said. Along the way, he also knew exactly how many experts had gathered in this Buddhist temple. There were hundreds of Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. The combined forces of the two clans only had 3 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Once the Buddhist temple opened, it would be extremely dangerous for them to fight for the treasures. Although there are many experts, they do not belong to the same force. When the Buddhist temple opens, they will naturally fight for themselves. Yan Jun glanced around and suddenly said with a change in expression. However, I want to deal with someone. I wonder if Brother Mu has any ideas? Brother Yan, who do you want to deal with? Hearing this, Mujio asked curiously. At this time, the most important thing should be the treasures in the Buddhist temple. But from what Yan Jun said, it seemed that he wanted to deal with someone? This made him very curious. I want to deal with this person. Yan Jun stretched out his hand and pointed at Chu Fengmian. Mujio's gaze followed the direction Yan Jun was pointing at and his expression changed slightly. 2 Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. That person is Chu Fengmian of the Holy Dragon sect? Brother Yan, why do you want to deal with this person? Mujio recognized Chu Fengmian's origin the moment he saw him. Although Chu Fengmian's reputation had not spread to the Yanluo galaxy, there were rumors about Chu Fengmian's strength in the Crimson Continent. This news was deliberately released by the 3 major forces. It was precisely because they wanted others to deal with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had the strength to contend with the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Mujio had also heard of the rumors about his fortuitous encounters. Mujio wanted to obtain all the fortuitous encounters. When he looked at Chu Fengmian, his eyes were filled with greed. This person is not easy to deal with. However, Mujio did not agree immediately. Chu Fengmian was simply a moving treasure. Every expert in the Crimson Continent knew this, but Chu Fengmian was still able to stand here. This also proved that it was not easy to deal with Chu Fengmian. Chapter 1586. Emperor Yan and Qing Meng were both 9 Tribulation ancient emperors, let alone Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's strength was not inferior to the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. There were very few people who could deal with Chu Fengmian. In particular, Chu Fengmian's methods were ruthless. Rashly dealing with Chu Fengmian was akin to seeking death. With the strength of our 2 families, it won't be difficult to kill this person if we join forces. When Yan Jun heard Mu Jiu's words, there was a hint of displeasure in his eyes. However, he did not turn hostile and continued to speak with a smile. Although this person is strong, he is not the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. As long as Elder Hai makes a move, it will be easy to kill this person. As for the 2 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu beside him, our Yen family can naturally deal with them. This Elder Hai was referring to the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu behind Mu Jiu. But this person is a powerhouse of the Holy Dragon sect. What about Yun Zun? Mu Jiu's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. Yun Zun was not only a famous existence in the Daluo star field, but also in the Yenluo star field. If there was anyone in this era who was most likely to step into the celestial realm, that person's name would definitely be Yun Zun. There were very few disciples in the Holy Dragon sect. Because of this, the Holy Dragon sect was famous for being protective. Whoever killed a disciple of the Holy Dragon sect would definitely be annihilated once Yun Zun returned. Yun Zun? He has long disappeared. Don't worry. What's more, the Holy Dragon sect can't even protect itself now. The 3 major forces of the Daluo star field have already attacked the Holy Dragon sect. When Yun Zun returns, he will also fight to the death with the 3 major forces. Yan Jun spoke indifferently. He glanced at Mu Jiu and then said, "Kill this person. Our Yen family will only take 30% of the opportunities and treasures on him. How about that?" "Are you serious?" Mu Jiu originally wanted to say a few more words, but when she heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. Yan Jun, don't lie. However, there is one thing. Our Yen family will take one of the things on this person first. Other than that, we will split it 370. Yan Jun snorted coldly. He did not care much about the countless adventures that Chu Fengmian had. What he really cared about was the fragment of the Renhuang jar that Chu Fengmian had. The fragment of the supreme immortal weapon was what Yan Jun wanted. In his body, the fragment of the jar of Renhuang was also trembling violently because of Chu Fengmian. This trembling proved that Chu Fengmian had more than one fragment of the Renhuang jar. He had to get it. Good. Old Hai, you can go and kill him. But now is not the time to do so. Wait until the temple opens and the situation becomes chaotic. Mu Jiu agreed, and Elder Hai behind him also nodded. Of course, they were willing to accept such a good deal. This man is Chu Fengmian? This person actually has countless treasures on him. When this person was still a quasi-emperor, he was already able to contend against an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Now that he has stepped into the Emperor realm, he is already a 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu. This kind of strength is simply shocking. I wonder how many fortuitous encounters he had. Killing him and obtaining his empty ring is no less than obtaining a huge treasure. We'll find an opportunity to kill him. On the mountain peak, Chu Fengmian stood there and could see the murderous gazes looking at him. These 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu did not hide their gazes when they looked at Chu Fengmian. Among the Emperor Gu present, at least a dozen of them had murderous intentions towards Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's strength was simply too terrifying. It was simply beyond the scope of a genius. There was no other explanation except that Chu Fengmian had a shocking opportunity. This was also the fundamental reason why countless people wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. It seems that Brother Chu is in a lot of trouble. The Yen Emperor also noticed this and whispered to Chu Fengmian, "Do you need me to help you stop a few people later? A bunch of chickens and pottery dogs. They are not worth mentioning. I alone am enough to deal with them. When the temple opens, there will be no shortage of treasures inside." You and senior sister should seize the opportunity to collect the treasures inside. As for those people, they don't have the ability to kill me, Chu Fengmian said proudly. The Nine Tribulation Emperor Gu wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. In a one-on-one battle, Chu Fengmian could kill Emperor Gu. The biggest threat to Chu Fengmian was the Five Elements Saber Saint, a half-step celestial being expert. As for the others, Chu Fengmian did not care. Moreover, as long as Chu Fengmian rushed into the temple, it would not be easy for anyone to deal with Chu Fengmian in the chaos. Hearing Chu Fengmian's confident words, Emperor Yen did not say anything. Based on his understanding of Chu Fengmian was naturally not the kind of person who would brag and speak without thinking. Since Chu Fengmian was confident, he also believed that Chu Fengmian could deal with it. And indeed, the biggest threat to Chu Fengmian was the Five Elements Saber Saint. Even if Emperor Yen and Qing Meng worked together, they would not be able to help Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian also looked at Yan Jun. His eyes were also surging with murderous intent. Among all the people present, the person Chu Fengmian wanted to kill the most, and also the person he had to kill, was Yan Jun. Chu Fengmian had to get the fragment of the Emperor Jar in Yan Jun's hands. In the Crimson Continent, it was the best opportunity to kill Yan Jun. Otherwise, once Yan Jun left the Nine Domains and returned to the Yan Luo starfield, it would be much more difficult for Chu Fengmian to kill Yan Jun. After all, the Yan Luo starfield was very far away from the Daluotian starfield. It would take a long time to cross the starry sky. Moreover, the Yan Luo starfield was the Yan clan's lair. Unless Chu Fengmian's true strength was comparable to a half-step celestial being, it was almost impossible to go to the Yan clan's lair and kill Yan Jun, enter the temple and kill him. Chu Fengmian quietly erased all the aura in the god's spying mirror, leaving only Yan Jun's aura. When he arrived at the temple, Chu Fengmian would look for an opportunity to kill Yan Jun. Time passed by minute. More and more experts gathered around the temple, but it was incomparably calm. In the Crimson Continent there was a rare period of peace. In the temple, there was not a single battle. Even enemies had put aside their grievances. All the experts were accumulating their strength, waiting for the moment the temple opened so that they could rush into the temple to snatch the treasure. No one was willing to waste their strength in a useless fight at this time. Above the temple, the runes on the temple had become brighter, and the seven-colored light that soared into the sky became more and more brilliant. Countless people perked up. The Buddhist temple was about to open. Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness was observing every movement around the temple. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian sensed a fluctuation of spiritual power in the sky. Chapter 1587. This wave of spiritual energy was so weak that it did not attract anyone's attention. Only Chu Fengmian was observing his surroundings to prevent the Five Elements Saber Saint from suddenly attacking. The Princess of the Sea had told Chu Fengmian that the Five Elements Saber Saint would attack him the moment the temple opened. However, Chu Fengmian did not dare to let down his guard. His spiritual senses were activated to the extreme as he observed his surroundings. Although this wave of spiritual energy disappeared in an instant, Chu Fengmian was sharp enough to capture it. This wave of spiritual energy was not far from Chu Fengmian. At a glance, there was only the sky. Even if Chu Fengmian used his spiritual senses to explore, he could not detect anything strange. However, the appearance of the spiritual energy wave just now was not ordinary. Chu Fengmian's intuition could not be wrong. God's spying mirror. Chu Fengmian's expression did not change. However, he quietly activated the power of the God's spying mirror and injected the wave of spiritual energy that he had just sensed into it. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian saw a figure in the empty sky at the place where the spirit force fluctuations were just now. This figure contained an extremely terrifying power. The power contained in this figure was the power of heaven and earth. It was much stronger than any venerable warrior that Chu Fengmian had ever seen. Half-step to the celestial realm. This is definitely a half step to the celestial realm. This person's cultivation technique is very similar to the 5 Elements Saber Master. Is this the 5 Elements Saber Saint? Chu Fengmian observed carefully and found that this was a middle-aged man with white hair. He looked younger than the 5 Elements Saber Master. However, Chu Fengmian knew that it was almost impossible to distinguish a warrior's age by his appearance. For example, a half-step to the celestial realm expert's lifespan was several times longer than that of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Therefore, even if this 5 Elements Saber Saint was older than the 5 Elements Saber Master, he looked much younger. A half-step to the celestial realm expert was now a few miles away from Chu Fengmian. Now, this person's gaze was fixed on Chu Fengmian. Even if Chu Fengmian was already mentally prepared, he was still shocked when he saw the 5 Elements Saber Saint. The 5 Elements Saber Sage did his best to remain calm and collected, as if he had not discovered the 5 Elements Saber Sage. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian had lived 2 lifetimes and had a firm Tao heart. If it had been any other Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations, it would have been hard for him not to be exposed. The 5 Elements Saber Saint had already arrived at Chu Fengmian's side before the Buddhist temple opened. He was waiting for an opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian with one strike. The information that the Princess of the Sea had given Chu Fengmian was indeed accurate. If the Princess of the Sea had not told Chu Fengmian about the 5 Elements Saber Saint, Chu Fengmian would not have been able to detect that the 5 Elements Saber Saint had already sneaked up on him. After all, the 5 Elements Saber Saint's figure was hidden. Even Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense could not detect him. Chu Fengmian had only just captured a wisp of the 5 Elements Saber Saint's aura when his spiritual sense was fully activated. With the help of the God-prying mirror, Shao Chun barely managed to discover the 5 Elements Saber Sage. He's still waiting. The 5 Elements Saber Saint should be waiting for the Buddhist temple to open. Chu Fengmian observed the 5 Elements Saber Saint. Now, the 5 Elements Saber Saint had completely hidden his aura and figure. He should be waiting for the Buddhist temple to open so that he could attack and kill Chu Fengmian. When the Buddhist temple opened, it would attract everyone's attention. Chu Fengmian was no exception. When the time came, a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian would be the most fatal. The 5 Elements Saber Saint had made such a choice because he really wanted to kill Chu Fengmian with one strike. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, a series of booming sounds came from the ancient Buddhist temple. The ancient runes on the Buddhist temple had already begun to condense. The 7-colored light had also reached its peak. The dazzling light could be seen clearly from thousands of miles away. Countless experts present were tense at this moment. This was a sign that the treasure was about to open. The Buddhist temple was also about to open. In this ancient Buddhist temple, rays of light seemed to be unable to be suppressed and suddenly burst out. Is that the 1,000 Thoughts Buddhist beads? The legendary spiritual weapon of the 1,000 Thoughts Buddha. A warrior stared at one of the rays of light and shouted in disbelief when he saw a Buddhist bead in the light screen. Countless people could feel the power of the 1,000 Thoughts Buddhist beads in the light. It definitely contained an earth-shattering power. The martialist who shouted was wearing a kasaya. He was a Buddha from the Pure Land star field. When he saw the Buddhist beads, he could not help but shout. 1,000 Thoughts Buddha was once an expert of the Pure Land sect. It was said that he had already stepped into the half-step celestial realm and was only a step away from the celestial realm. The most powerful spiritual weapon of the 1,000 Thoughts Buddha was a Buddhist bead. The 1,000 Thoughts Buddhist beads disappeared along with the 1,000 Thoughts Buddha. Who would have thought that it would appear once again in this Buddhist temple? The 1,000 Thoughts Buddhist beads is the most precious treasure of our Buddhism. We must get it. Several experts of the Pure Land sect said. When they looked at the 1,000 Thoughts Buddhist beads, they could not help but look at it. If it weren't for the fact that the 10,000 Thoughts Buddhist beads was only an illusion and the real 10,000 Thoughts Buddhist beads were still in the temple, they would have already gone all out to snatch it. Is that a wooden fish? What a powerful force! That's the golden bowl of delusions. Looking at the rays of light that appeared, many of the spiritual weapons were recognized by the crowd. Without exception, all of them were the most precious treasures of Buddhism. For example, the 1,000 Thoughts Buddhist bead's power was ranked at the peak of heaven-grade spiritual weapons. It was almost invincible among those below extreme immortal weapons. There were dozens of Buddhist treasures that appeared. It was a dazzling array of treasures that dazzled the eyes. Not only were there numerous Buddhist treasures, but there were also a large number of ancient sacred herbs that appeared. In the ancient Buddhism, there was a branch which was the path of Vajra. It specialized in body cultivation and was ranked among the top among the countless path of body cultivation. Therefore, there were many ancient sacred herbs used for body cultivation in many of the Buddhist treasures. In one of the rays of light, there was a fist-sized centipede with 3 pairs of wings. In another ray of light, there was a reddish gold stone. 6-winged centipede. Concealed gold essence. These are the most precious treasures for body cultivation. Chu Fengmian had heard of these 2 treasures before. They were the most valuable treasures of the Tao of body refining. Chapter 1588. Among them, the 6-winged centipede was a kind of natural variant. It was a rare and unique creature with an extremely strong physical body. It was said that the 6-winged centipede could tear the space apart with brute force. Even the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, or a half-step celestial being, would not be able to escape from the 6-winged centipede. The slightest carelessness would cause the 6-winged centipede to drill a hole in the body. In this small body there was an extremely strong physical body. In ancient times, the 6-winged centipede was a supreme treasure that countless experts of the body-refining path dreamed of. The 6-winged holy body elixir, refined from the body of the 6-winged centipede, was one of the best body-refining elixirs. Experts who wanted to reach the pinnacle of body-refining path needed the elixir without exception. The Tibetan gold essence was transformed from the thick earth essence. Once refined, it could condense the power of the physical body and transform the physical body. The 6-winged holy body elixir was purely used to enhance the physical body, while the Tibetan gold essence could not only enhance the physical body, but also enhance the spiritual meridians, making them thicker and stronger. These 2 supreme treasures were famous in ancient times. Only experts of the celestial being realm had the opportunity to obtain them. People below the celestial being realm were not qualified to obtain these 2 supreme treasures. Chu Fengmian saw these 2 supreme treasures in the light of the opening of the Buddhist temple. These 2 supreme treasures were enough to strengthen Chu Fengmian's body. It would be of great help to condense the true immortal real body. Of course, there were many other treasures that were of great use to Chu Fengmian. However, the most valuable ones were the 6-winged centipede and the Tibetan gold essence. If it's the Buddha's cave mansion, it's not unbelievable that there are such treasures. Chu Fengmian was not surprised. The Buddha was a figure who was on the same level as the immortal emperor. In any era, he was a supreme expert. At most, there were people who were on the same level as him, but no one could surpass him. After the fall of the Buddha, the things left behind were absolute supreme treasures. When they saw the countless treasure lights, the countless experts at the scene became even crazier. Some of them were even itching to give it a try, wanting to rush in. However, as one of the ancient emperors rushed in recklessly, he was instantly killed by the seals above the temple. Only then did the martial artists finally calm down. The light of the treasures was illusory. Before the temple opened, no one could set foot inside. But the temple was about to open. The light of the treasures, when the last light disappeared, an ancient voice resounded. Chu Fengmian couldn't understand the voice, but he could tell that it was Sanskrit, the most ancient language of Buddhism. The temple's Buddha's Buddha. The doors of the ancient Buddhist temple opened with a bang, revealing countless precious treasures within. Through the light of the light holy body. Go! The treasures in this temple are mine. Heaven earth. Reverse formation 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 formation. Boom. Countless figures rushed toward the temple's door at the same time. At this time, whoever stepped into the temple first would have the upper hand and the best chance to obtain the treasures. Among the Buddha's supreme treasures, the worst were the spiritual weapons of the half-step celestial realm. Many of them were even spiritual weapons of the celestial realm expert. Obtaining one of them was enough to make a Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu soar and increase his strength. The scene was crazy. The Avalon of 5 elements, vast ocean, and Chilan Mountain had the most Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. The moment the temple opened, they immediately joined forces to set up an ancient formation that shrouded the entrance of the temple. Any expert who approached the entrance of the Buddhist temple would be attacked by the ancient array. These 3 factions planned on keeping all the martial artists outside and devouring all the treasures in this Buddhist temple for themselves. Damn it! These 3 forces intend to take it all for themselves. Break this formation and rush in. Countless ancient emperors saw that the entrance to the Buddhist temple had been destroyed. Every one of them went berserk and attacked the spirit design that the 3 major powers had set up together. A Nine Tribulation ancient emperor might not be worth mentioning in front of the 3 top forces. However, the number of Nine Tribulation ancient emperors from the other forces was twice the number of Nine Tribulation ancient emperors from the 3 top forces. The actions of the 3 forces had undoubtedly provoked a public anger. No matter which side the experts belonged to, they were unwilling to let the 3 forces monopolize the treasures in the temple. Countless Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu joined forces to attack the yin-yang reversal formation. Although these Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu had joined forces, they were not united. Their goal was the treasures in the temple, not a true alliance. Although there were many people attacking, no one was willing to use their full strength, so they could not break the yin-yang reversal formation immediately. The scene was chaotic. Amidst the chaos, a saber light suddenly slashed down from the sky. This saber light was like a slash from heaven and earth. It fell silently from the sky, and there was even a hint of gray fog in this light. The aura of chaos. The power of this saber had touched upon the chaos. The 5 elements were separated from the chaos. The ultimate of the Avalon of 5 elements was to return to the chaos. Although the 5 elements Saber Grandmaster's 5 elements divine saber was mysterious, it was far from reaching this level. However, this saber light had touched upon the chaos. The saber slashed down so fast that no one could react. The 5 elements Saber Saint, who had been lurking nearby and watching Chu Fengmian, finally made his move. Amidst the chaos, Chu Fengmian could not even take care of himself. The saber went straight for Chu Fengmian's heart. Tyrannical power was contained in the blade as it slashed towards Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's figure seemed to be standing there without any reaction. The old man who made the move sneered. At this moment, the saber slashed Chu Fengmian's body. However, the old man's face suddenly froze. There was no blood when the saber slashed. What was slashed was only a shadow. He dodged it. The old man's voice was extremely shocked, but there was also endless anger in it. The 5 elements Saber Saint was a half-step celestial realm expert. He had been famous for a long time and had a prominent status. He was an ancestor-like existence in the Avalon of 5 element. He attacked a junior like Chu Fengmian with a sneak attack. It was already despicable. Now, Chu Fengmian actually dodged it. To him, it was a disgrace. Where did he escape to? Chapter 1589. Where did he escape to? Boom. The 5 elements Saber Saint was enraged, and he activated his spiritual sense to the extreme. A wave of spiritual sense descended, and all the experts present seemed to be under the gaze of this gaze. Nothing could hide from this spiritual sense. The spiritual sense of a half-step to celestial realm expert was enough to sweep across an area of 100 miles. No martial artist within 100 miles could hide from his spiritual sense. The 5 elements Saber Saint's eyes flickered. He saw a figure flying out from where Chu Fengmian was just a moment ago, towards the direction of the Buddhist temple. The 5 elements Saber Saint's sneak attack is really impossible to guard against. Even if I could sense it, it would be difficult for me to avoid this person's saber light. Chu Fengmian thought with lingering fear as he flew and looked at the mountain peak he was on. It had already turned into a flat ground. The 5 elements Saber Saint's saber light was too fast. It was so fast that even if Chu Fengmian could sense it, it would be difficult for him to avoid it. If Chu Fengmian had not learned from the Princess of the Sea that the 5 elements Saber Saint was going to launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian, and if Chu Fengmian had not been prepared in advance, Chu Fengmian would have been dead for sure. The strength of a half-step to celestial realm expert was much stronger than Chu Fengmian had imagined. Moreover, if it was a sneak attack, the threat would be many times greater. The moment Chu Fengmian dodged the saber light, he had already pushed the conveyance light to the extreme and flew towards the entrance of the Buddhist temple. Qin Meng and Emperor Yin had been sent away by Chu Fengmian earlier, so they did not encounter the saber light. Now they were wandering around the vicinity of the Buddhist temple, looking for an opportunity to enter. The entrance of the Buddhist temple was now controlled by the 3 superpowers. Chu Fengmian had already seen several 9 tribulations. Emperor Gu of the 3 superpowers had already entered the temple. However, there were still many 9 tribulations Emperor Gu left. They were now maintaining the yin-yang reversal formation and stalling for time. As long as they could stall for a minute, the 3 superpowers would be able to obtain more treasures from the Buddhist temple. If they entered too late, they would not be able to obtain a single treasure. The yin-yang reversal formation is about to be broken. Let's rush in. Chu Fengmian glanced at the yin-yang reversal array and found that there were already many cracks on it. The number of experts on the 3 major powers side couldn't compare to all the ancient emperors present. Although they had set up the yin-yang reversal spirit design in advance, they still needed a large number of experts to maintain it. Now, several 9 tribulations Emperor Gu of the 3 superpowers had already entered the Buddhist temple to fight for the treasures. As a result, the power of the yin-yang reversal formation outside to resist the others had become even weaker. Under the combined efforts of countless martialists, the yin-yang reversal array was already filled with cracks. It would not be long before it shattered. After dodging the 5 elements Saber Saint's attack, Chu Fengmian observed for a moment before flying toward the entrance of the Buddhist temple without hesitation. Today, Chu Fengmian's plan was not just to avoid the 5 elements Saber Saint's pursuit. If this was just to avoid the 5 elements Saber Saint, Chu Fengmian would leave directly. However, Chu Fengmian's purpose was to enter the Buddhist temple to collect the treasures. It was better to rush in directly than to escape. Chu Fengmian also knew that such a treasure would not be smooth, just like the 9 mystic celestial masters' cave abode or the lion tyrant martial ancestors' cave abode. Countless traps, restrictions, and even tests would be set up in the process. The Buddhist temple was so big and there were so many treasures inside. The situation inside would definitely be more complicated. Once Chu Fengmian entered, it would not be easy for the 5 elements Saber Saint to kill him. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered as he flew toward the entrance of the Buddhist temple. Countless martialists present also felt the terrifying power just now. When the blade slashed down, many of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu could not help but tremble. A half-step celestial realm expert. A half-step celestial realm expert has struck. Even the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu felt incomparably fearful of the power contained in it. Only a half-step celestial realm expert could have such power. Everyone hurriedly looked toward the sky. It's the 5 elements Saber Saint. A few of the Daluo star domain experts had already recognized the 5 elements Saber Saint. Their faces suddenly changed, and they did not dare to approach him. The Five Elements Saber Saint was a famous figure tens of thousands of years ago. Now that he had stepped into the half-step celestial realm, no one dared to go against him. The Five Elements Saber Saint did not have the intention to pay attention to the others. The moment his spiritual consciousness discovered Chu Fengmian, his figure flickered and suddenly rushed toward Chu Fengmian. "Get out of my way!" With a single palm strike, the few ancient emperors in front of him were killed instantly. In the hands of the Five Elements Saber Saint, Emperor Gu was like an ant. He could kill him as he wished, without any ability to resist. Looking at the light that Chu Fengmian flew toward the entrance of the Buddhist temple, the Five Elements Saber Saint's speed was extremely fast. He suddenly closed in on Chu Fengmian, condensing a spiritual saber in his palm that showed the color of chaos. The Five Elements Saber Saint was accumulating power in his palm. "This old man wants to kill me?" Sensing the power accumulated in the saber in the Five Elements Saber Saint's hand, Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a bit of coldness. He did not expect the Five Elements Saber Saint to be so murderous. He would rather enter the Buddhist temple later to fight for the treasure and kill Chu Fengmian. The Five Elements Saber Saint's murderous intent towards Chu Fengmian exceeded Chu Fengmian's expectations. The Five Elements Saber Saint's light was extremely fast. Even if Chu Fengmian had the bloodline of ancestor Tianlong, he could not compare with the Five Elements Saber Saint's light. In an instant, the Five Elements Saber Saint was less than 1,000 meters away from Chu Fengmian. "Little bastard, you have angered me. You, an ant, actually dared to kill my disciple. Today, I will scatter your soul and let you die under my saber." The Five Elements Saber Saint shouted coldly and immediately slashed out with his saber. The chaotic aura filled the air and turned into the most ferocious power in the saber. It immediately slashed toward Chu Fengmian. Many warriors nearby who did not manage to evacuate in time were drawn into the chaotic aura and were killed on the spot. Their blood essence was completely destroyed, and they did not even have the chance to reconstruct their bodies. Five Elements Divine Saber. It was still the Five Elements Saber Saint's strongest move, the Five Elements Divine Saber. The Five Elements Saber Saint was determined to kill Chu Fengmian. He was looking for a killer move. The saber was so fast that it instantly closed in on Chu Fengmian's junior. Chu Fengmian did not have time to dodge. Chu Fengmian had already felt that this terrifying saber was going to destroy everything about him. Under the saber, there was no chance of survival. Anyone who was hit by this saber would undoubtedly die. Chapter 1590. The Five Elements Saber Saint sensed Chu Fengmian's trace and immediately chased after him. He wanted to kill Chu Fengmian again. In an instant, the saber light of the Five Elements Divine Saber approached Chu Fengmian. Feeling the light behind him approaching, Chu Fengmian's face changed. He knew that he could not avoid it, so he did not try to avoid it. Instead, he gathered all his strength. "Blessing of the Divine Tree!" Chu Fengmian shouted, and the shadow of the Divine Tree appeared behind him. The spiritual power in his body continued to circulate, and the 129,600 fleshly crystals in Chu Fengmian's body condensed at the same time, turning into an immortal defense. In the cave of the Lion Tyrant Martial Ancestor, Chu Fengmian obtained the Builder Tree branch. Now, the Builder Tree branch was completely devoured by the Divine Tree. The power of the Divine Tree was at least 30% stronger than before. The shadow of the Divine Tree appeared, covering the sky and the sun. It somewhat resembled the real Builder Tree. The shadow of the Divine Tree shrouded Chu Fengmian's body and merged with his body. The Divine Tree was one of Chu Fengmian's greatest trump cards. Chu Fengmian did not dare to reveal it unless it was a critical moment. After all, subduing a Divine Tree was absolutely an amazing opportunity. Once it was exposed, it would bring endless trouble to Chu Fengmian. But now, Chu Fengmian was facing a half-step celestial realm expert. He also knew that this was no longer the time to hide his trump cards. Facing the five elements saber saint, he would be courting death if he had any reservations. The shadow of the divine tree shrouded Chu Fengmian's body. The blade of the five elements divine saber followed and bombarded Chu Fengmian. It first slashed the shadow of the divine tree. Boom! The power contained in the blade was extremely strong. It could not be compared with the five elements divine saber displayed by the five elements saber grandmaster. The power was dozens of times stronger. As the blade slashed down, Chu Fengmian felt that his body was about to be split open. The shadow of the divine tree was constantly shaking. The shadow of the divine tree was a part of the divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body. The blade slashing the shadow of the divine tree was almost equivalent to slashing the divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body. Crack! Under the power of the five elemental divine blade, cracks started to appear on the divine tree's shadow. The cracks on the divine tree's shadow were about to split the entire divine tree apart. Not even the divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body could withstand the power of the blade. Divine tree? Is this the divine tree transformed from the Jianmu tree? When the five elements saber saint saw the shadow of the divine tree appear behind Chu Fengmian, he recognized it at a glance as it suddenly blocked the five elements divine saber's blade. What was the origin of this divine tree? There was only one source for such a vast life force, and that was the builder tree. Subduing divine tree. This is something that countless experts and geniuses throughout history have failed to do, but this kid actually did it. No wonder his strength is so heaven-defying. The five elements saber saint stared at Chu Fengmian. He could also feel that Chu Fengmian was more difficult to kill than any of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu he had killed. The sacred tree's silhouette appeared and immediately blocked the power of the five elements divine saber, preventing it from landing on Chu Fengmian's body. Only by breaking the sacred tree's silhouette could one deal with Chu Fengmian. It could be said that it was a perfect defense. However, you are too weak. With the realm of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, even if you have many opportunities, only death awaits you today. Saber breaking heaven and earth. The five elements saber saint let out a long roar, and a surge of spiritual energy was injected into the five elements divine saber. Immediately, the power of the five elements divine saber increased by several folds, and it slashed on the sacred tree's silhouette. The branches of the sacred tree's silhouette were shattered under the slash of the saber, and countless cracks were densely packed all over it. This made Chu Fengmian's expression change drastically. The sacred tree was the foundation of the tyrannical physical strength. Once the sacred tree's silhouette was shattered, it would have an incomparably huge impact on the sacred tree in Chu Fengmian's body. Even if the sacred tree did not die, it would be seriously injured, and it would be almost impossible for it to recover. Withdraw. When the cracks on the sacred tree's silhouette were about to reach the limit, Chu Fengmian's mind suddenly moved. The sacred tree's silhouette, which was behind Chu Fengmian, was suddenly withdrawn into Chu Fengmian's body. Although it only resisted for a moment, the power of the five elements divine saber was less than 1/10 of its previous power. However, even if it was only 1/10 of its power, it was still more powerful than the bombardment of several 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. At this time, Chu Fengmian finally understood why an expert like the five elements saber saint was called a half-step celestial being. Although their realm was still that of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, their strength had completely surpassed that of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu after reaching the threshold of the celestial being realm. Even if 9 tribulations Emperor Gu joined forces to deal with the five elements saber saint, the five elements saber saint would be able to fight against 10 of them. For him, it was a piece of cake. Chu Fengmian only understood the strength of a half-step celestial being realm expert after a real fight. The moment the sacred tree's silhouette collided with the five elements divine saber, the sacred tree was slightly injured. If it continued to resist, even the sacred tree's silhouette would be able to withstand the blade of the five elements divine saber. However, it would also leave an indelible injury to the sacred tree. This was also the reason why Chu Fengmian withdrew the sacred tree's silhouette. The moment the sacred tree's silhouette was withdrawn by Chu Fengmian, the five elements divine saber lost its resistance and immediately slashed at Chu Fengmian again. The five elements divine saber, which only had 1/10 of its power, seemed easy to deal with. However, for any 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, this strike was a fatal strike that could not be blocked. Flesh crystal. Crack. The 129,600 flesh crystals on Chu Fengmian's body seemed to condense into one at this moment. And at this moment, the power of the five elements divine saber completely slashed at Chu Fengmian's body. In Chu Fengmian's body, the bloodline power, the natal sword energy, the power of creation, and all kinds of forces burst out at the same time. The Gate of Dharma and Logos, the archaic Bronze Gate, and the Heavenly Nine Dragons Cauldron. These 3 spiritual treasures were also in Chu Fengmian's body, guarding it. 30% of the power of the 5 elements divine saber was blocked by these 3 spiritual treasures. Even so, 70% of its power still bombarded the flesh crystals. The flesh crystals were shaking violently. If not for the protection of Chu Fengmian's spiritual power, they would have collapsed in an instant. Even if Chu Fengmian relied on his half-step immortal real body to withstand this blow, he would still be seriously injured. However, as the flesh crystals shook, the power of the 5 elements divine saber gradually weakened and finally disappeared. Puff! Chu Fengmian suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1591. On the other side, the 5 elements saber saint looked at Chu Fengmian with shock in his eyes. Chu Fengmian had actually withstood his blade. The 5 elements saber saint had not held back in the slightest. It was his strongest killing move. It was extremely difficult for a half-step celestial being to withstand this move. Even if 9 tribulations Emperor Gu joined forces, they would be killed by the saber just now. If it was any other 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, the 5 elements saber saint was confident that he could kill them with a single saber strike. However, Chu Fengmian actually withstood it. Although he was seriously injured, the 5 elements saber saint still found it unbelievable. Although Chu Fengmian was only in the realm of 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, his current strength was even more powerful than most of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. If I don't kill this person, he will become a big threat. The 5 elements saber saint originally planned to kill Chu Fengmian because his disciple, the 5 elements saber grandmaster, died in Chu Fengmian's hands. But now, even if he put aside the hatred of the 5 elements saber grandmaster, the 5 elements saber saint wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian was only in the realm of 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, but he already had such terrifying strength. Once Chu Fengmian stepped into the realm of 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, or even the moment he stepped into the half-step celestial being realm and was on equal footing with him, he could not imagine Chu Fengmian's strength at that time. Annihilation saber. Annihilation under the saber. Boom. After the saber strike, the power on the saber in the 5 elements saber saint's hand condensed again and slashed towards Chu Fengmian. Chen Xing pursued and attacked Chu Fengmian again. Tianlong change. Before the 5 elements saber saint attacked, Chu Fengmian had already activated the power of ancestor Tianlong to the extreme. He knew that he was extremely lucky to be able to withstand the saber strike. Chu Fengmian had barely withstood the saber strike with all his strength. However, the saber strike had also seriously injured Chu Fengmian. If he withstood the second strike, Chu Fengmian would definitely die. His body suddenly disappeared in the air. In an instant, he rushed into the yin-yang reversal formation. Trying to escape? It's not that easy. The 5 elements saber saint bellowed furiously. He turned into a streak of light and gave chase again. Tianlong's transformative light tore through space. It was so fast that even the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu could not see it clearly. However, it could not escape the eyes of the Five Elements Saber Saint. The Five Elements Saber Sage followed closely behind and rushed into the yin-yang reversal formation. Inside the yin-yang reversal array, countless Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations were fighting with the experts of the three major forces, Emperor Gu. They planned to break this yin-yang reversal formation and rush into the Buddhist temple. Countless martial skills were unleashed, and the spiritual energy was berserk. Within the yin-yang reversal array, there were countless experts exchanging blows with each other. Crack! Right at this moment, the sky was suddenly torn apart. Soon after, endless demonic will spread from within as a demonic domain suddenly descended. Countless figures appeared in this demon territory. The moment the leading figure descended, a terrifying power of the heavens and the earth immediately pressed down. This power of the heavens and the earth was much stronger than that of the Five Elements Saber Saint who had just fought with Chu Fengmian. Young Emperor! The young Emperor is here. The leading figure was noble and cold. It was the young Emperor, the invincible figure of the demon clan. Chu Fengmian had seen the young Emperor before, but it was only a trace of the young Emperor's incarnation. Even so, it had almost killed Chu Fengmian. Later, Chu Fengmian had snatched the skeleton of one of the 10 heavenly demons, the bronze heavenly demon, from the young Emperor's hands. Chu Fengmian had heard from Elder Yun that the young Emperor had also come to the 9 regions and the returning ruined sky. Now, the young Emperor had finally appeared. The appearance of the Buddhist temple had also attracted the young Emperor. Young Emperor, what are you doing here? The Five Elements Saber Saint, who had been chasing after Chu Fengmian, stopped and raised his head to look at the young Emperor in the sky. His gaze was extremely cold. The Nether Ghost Realm was located at the edge of the Daluotian star field. The powerhouses of the Daluotian star field had fought with the young Emperor before. Seeing the young Emperor's arrival, the Five Elements Saber Saint's gaze was a little nervous. He was obviously afraid of the young Emperor. Why are you here? Naturally, I'm here for the same reason. The young Emperor swept a glance, then his gaze fell on the Five Elements Saber Saint. You're the only old man? Where are all the half-step celestial realm old men of the major forces? You alone aren't enough to stop me. I alone am enough to deal with you. The Five Elements Saber Saint could hear the disdain in the young Emperor's voice and shouted coldly. I don't need to guess. You old men of the major forces are fighting to the death over that ferry boat. Unfortunately, the mystery of the ferry boat is not something you can see through. The young Emperor's lips curled into a cold smile. As he swept his gaze across, his eyes suddenly became extremely cold and filled with killing intent. His gaze fell on a figure in the yin-yang reversal formation. Flesh and blood crystal? Immortal true body? I didn't expect it to be refined by a little guy. Whoosh! Suddenly, Shouty's figure moved. All of a sudden, he pointed out with a finger. With a single finger, the world collapsed. The target of this move was Chu Fengmian. I've been exposed. Chu Fengmian's eyes burst with cold light. He once again performed the Tianlong transformation and flew toward the entrance of the Buddhist temple. The young Emperor had noticed Chu Fengmian's presence. Chu Fengmian had concealed his aura the moment the young Emperor's aura appeared, but he still could not escape the young Emperor's eyes. The young Emperor's strength was enough to suppress the Five Elements Saber Saint. He was an expert infinitely close to the celestial realm. No matter how mysterious Chu Fengmian's ability to conceal his aura was, the young Emperor still saw through him. It was a good thing for Chu Fengmian to have someone come to mess things up, but now that it was Xiao Di, it was another problem for Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had stolen the bronze heavenly demon skeleton from the young Emperor, so the young Emperor hated him to the core. The moment he saw Chu Fengmian again, Xiao Di attacked Chu Fengmian without hesitation. The young Emperor's strength was above the Five Elements Saber Saints. Chu Fengmian's figure vanished the moment the young Emperor's attack came crashing down. The dozens of ancient emperors around Chu Fengmian had been killed by the young emperor's finger before they could even put up a fight. They died in this crumbling world. Are you going to make an enemy of me, young emperor? The five elements Saber Saint glared at the young emperor and roared. Chapter 1592. Within the five elements reversal spirit design, countless ancient emperors were fighting. Suddenly, the young emperor struck out with a finger and many ancient emperors were killed. Get lost! Xiao Di shouted coldly at the five elements Saber Saint's words and rushed toward Chu Fengmian without a care. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he chased after Chu Fengmian, ignoring the five elements Saber Saint. Last time, Chu Fengmian took the bronze heavenly demon skeleton from him, ruining Xiao Di's plan to use it to break through to the celestial realm. It was the best chance for Xiao Di to break through to the celestial realm, but Chu Fengmian ruined it. Seeing Chu Fengmian again today, Xiao Di's anger exploded, and he wanted to kill Chu Fengmian at all costs. Xiao Di's escape light was so fast that he stepped into the five elements reversal formation in an instant. Immediately, the formation's power erupted and blasted toward Xiao Di. Destroy! Xiao Di's face turned cold, and he let out a long roar. Rolling spiritual energy burst out from his body, and the moment it came into contact with the countless experts, their bodies were immediately destroyed. The sky shook as Xiao Di's power turned into a black cloud that surrounded him. All kinds of power were destroyed the moment it came into contact with the cloud. Even the five elements reversal grand formation had a hole in it due to this force. Countless cracks appeared on it, and it was on the verge of collapse. The five elements reversal formation was strong enough to withstand the simultaneous attacks of dozens of nine tribulations Emperor Gu, but it was on the verge of collapse now that Xiao Di attacked. Oh no, even the five elements reversal formation can't stop Xiao Di? Chu Fengmian's expression changed drastically when he saw the five elements reversal great array crumbling behind him. He had rushed into the five elements reversal great array, hoping to borrow its power to stop the young emperor. However, Xiao Di's strength was much more terrifying than Chu Fengmian had imagined. Xiao Di could destroy the five elements reversal formation with a casual attack. Xiao Di's figure was invincible. Almost no one could stop him. Chu Fengmian was anxious. The five elements Saber Saint was already very troublesome to deal with. Now, there was a Xiao Di who was even more troublesome than the five elements Saber Saint. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed wildly as he observed his surroundings and tried to come up with a countermeasure. Suddenly, the gate to the entrance of the Buddhist temple abruptly opened. The five elements reversal formation had covered the entrance, but now that Xiao Di had attacked, the five elements reversal formation had been destroyed. There were no longer any obstructions at the entrance of the Buddhist temple. Go! I must get into the temple. Chu Fengmian didn't hesitate at all. His figure flashed and flew toward the entrance of the Buddhist temple. He was now only with Xiao Di's and Xiao Di's sex. It was almost impossible to escape from the hands of the young emperor and the five elements Saber Saint. Only by entering the Buddhist temple would he have a chance of survival. You want to escape? Heaven and earth seal. Xiao Di understood Chu Fengmian's intention when he saw Chu Fengmian flying toward the entrance. He sneered and struck out with his palm. The young emperor's palm covered a radius of 100 li. All the ancient emperors within that radius were suppressed by the power of this palm. They were unable to move an inch in the air, and couldn't even use their escape light. The young emperor's strength was infinitely close to the celestial realm. With a sudden move, he suppressed the space within a 100-mile radius with a single move. Chu Fengmian felt that his body was being squeezed by a huge force. Even though he had the power of ancestor Tianlong's bloodline, he could not move an inch under the suppression. A distance of 2 to 3 li could be traversed in the blink of an eye for the ancient emperor. However, to Chu Fengmian, it was an immeasurable distance. Among all the experts present, only five elements Saber Saint was unaffected. However, His gaze was fixed on Chu Fengmian, and he had no intention of intervening. 5 Elements Saber Saint could see that Xiao Di had attacked to kill Chu Fengmian. In that case, he had no intention of intervening. After all, his goal was to kill Chu Fengmian. It did not matter whether he was the one who killed Chu Fengmian or the Xiao Di. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's eyes clouded over when he saw 5 Elements Saber Saint's actions. He had originally planned to let Xiao Di and 5 Elements Saber Saint fight to give him a chance to escape. However, it seemed that 5 Elements Saber Saint would rather sacrifice a few disciples of the Avalon of 5 Elements than intervene and watch Xiao Di go after Chu Fengmian. Rolling black clouds shrouded Chu Fengmian. The situation was extremely dangerous. Chu Fengmian had challenged countless experts before, but only the young emperor made Chu Fengmian feel that even if Chu Fengmian gave it his all, he would not be a match for him. Xiao Di's strength had completely surpassed Chu Fengmian's. Even if Chu Fengmian had many fortuitous encounters today, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Brat, there's no need to struggle. Ever since you ruined this emperor's plans, your death has already been sealed. Xiao Di's figure flickered as he appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. His eyes stared at the crystallized flesh on Chu Fengmian's body, revealing a frenzied killing intent. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'll extract all the opportunities you have and refine you completely. This immortal real body belongs to me. 10,000 demons submit. Suppress. Xiao Di shouted coldly as his rolling spiritual energy suppressed Chu Fengmian. Xiao Di seemed to be the emperor of 10,000 demons, high and mighty. Every word of his was a supreme power. Rolling demonic will condensed and suppressed Chu Fengmian's body, turning heaven and earth into a sea of demonic will. Xiao Di did not intend to kill Chu Fengmian today, but to suppress him. However, Chu Fengmian knew that being suppressed by Xiao Di would be a fate worse than death. Under the suppression of the rolling demonic will, Chu Fengmian felt that every crystallized flesh on his body was withstanding an incomparably great force. His entire body could not move. You want to suppress me? Don't even think about it. Chu Fengmian's face revealed a hint of madness. He threw caution to the wind and displayed his greatest trump card. An ancient broken jar suddenly flew out from Chu Fengmian's body and spun out a burst of white light. The power of human emperor. Enlighten all living beings. The white light burst out from the ancient jar, madly attacking the surrounding demonic will. Chapter 1593. The demonic will surrounding Chu Fengmian was destroyed by the white light. Not even the demon emperor's demonic will could withstand the white light. Chu Fengmian had used his greatest trump card, the Emperor Jar. Faced with certain death, Chu Fengmian didn't hold back and unleashed the Emperor Jar's power. In the blink of an eye, the demonic will that was suppressing Chu Fengmian's body was completely broken by the impact of the Renhuang Jar. What a terrifying power! This is the immortal Tao, an immortal weapon. It's the power of an extreme immortal weapon. An extreme immortal weapon? How is this possible? How is he in possession of such an extreme immortal weapon? Countless eyes looked at Chu Fengmian. Both the young emperor and the 5 Elements Saber Saint stared at the Emperor Jar in front of Chu Fengmian, unable to look away. With their knowledge, they naturally knew what the Emperor Jar represented. It was an extreme path celestial weapon. Even if it was a damaged extreme path celestial weapon, it was still many times more powerful than a heaven-grade spirit weapon. Such a supreme treasure hadn't appeared in hundreds of thousands of years. Chu Fengmian's broken Emperor Jar was the only extreme immortal weapon that had appeared in hundreds of thousands of years. So what if you have an extreme immortal weapon? It's just a broken one. Even if you have a complete one, you won't be able to escape from me. The young emperor suddenly reached out and grabbed the Emperor Jar in front of Chu Fengmian. Give it to me. The young emperor suddenly snatched the Emperor Jar from Chu Fengmian. Oh no. Chu Fengmian's expression changed drastically as he sensed great danger. The Emperor Jar was his last trump card against the young emperor. Once he lost the Emperor Jar, Chu Fengmian would lose his last bit of life force. Chu Fengmian hurriedly tried to channel the Emperor Jar's power again, but the young emperor was faster than he'd imagined. The young emperor hadn't used his full strength when he attacked just now. Now that he saw the Emperor Jar, the young emperor went all out. Before the Emperor Jar's power could gather again, the young emperor's palm struck out and shattered the jar's power. The power of the aftershocks bombarded Chu Fengmian's body. It was just the aftershocks of Xiaodi's attack. Chu Fengmian could feel the 129,600 flesh and blood crystals in his body vibrating violently. His body was on the verge of being completely destroyed. The Emperor Jar lost its power and flew towards Chu Fengmian's body. But Xiaodi suddenly reached out and grabbed the jar. The Emperor Jar was about to fall into Xiaodi's hands. 5 elements divine blade, heaven and earth annihilation. Just then, another figure rushed over. It was the 5 elements Saber Saint. Originally, the 5 elements Saber Saint had planned to sit back and let Xiaodi kill Chu Fengmian. But now that he saw the Emperor Jar, the 5 elements Saber Saint could not hold back. Seeing that young king was about to take the human Emperor Jar, 5 elements Sword Saint could not help but attack. He slashed at young king. At the same time, the 5 elements Saber Saint gathered spiritual power in his other hand and grabbed the Emperor Jar. Fight for the Emperor Jar. To Xiaodi and the 5 elements Saber Saint, killing Chu Fengmian was no longer important. The most important thing was to fight for the Emperor Jar. It was the one and only extreme immortal weapon in the world. Once they got the Emperor Jar, both Xiaodi and the 5 elements Saber Saint's strength would increase tremendously. In this era where there were no Celestial Realm experts, a half-step Celestial Realm expert would become an absolute overlord if he obtained an extreme immortal weapon. Even though the 5 elements Saber Saint did not want to be Xiaodi's enemy, he could not help but attack when he saw the Emperor Jar. Seeing the saber light coming towards him, Xiaodi's eyes showed some fear. His figure flashed and pulled away, dodging the saber light. Xiaodi did not care about Emperor Gu, but he did not dare to ignore the 5 elements Saber Saint. After all, the 5 elements Saber Saint was also a half-step Celestial Realm expert. "Old man, do you want to die?" Xiaodi glared at the 5 elements Saber Saint and shouted angrily. "Get out of my way. I'm going to kill this kid today. I don't want to be your enemy." "I don't want to be your enemy either. I can let you have this kid, but I want the jar on him." The 5 elements Saber Saint stared at Chu Fengmian, not to be outdone. At the same time, he reached out to grab the Emperor Jar. Strike first and gain the upper hand. After getting the Emperor Jar on Chu Fengmian, the 5 elements Saber Saint could escape unscathed even if he was chased by Xiaodi. As long as he retreated into the Avalon of 5 elements, Xiaodi would not be able to do anything to him. "Damn you, old man!" Xiaodi shouted crazily when he saw the 5 elements Saber Saint trying to interfere and snatch the Emperor Jar fragment. Destruction of heaven and earth. Surging demonic will gathered in the Xiaodi's palm, condensing into a speck of darkness. Suddenly, the Xiaodi struck out with his palm. The speck of darkness hit the sky and spread wildly. The sky, the mountains, the rivers, everything was devoured by the darkness. Everything that was devoured by the darkness was annihilated, leaving nothing behind. Destruction of heaven and earth? The 5 elements Saber Saint's expression changed drastically when he saw the Xiaodi strike. He knew that this move was one of the most terrifying demonic techniques of the demonic clan. One strike could destroy heaven and earth. It was said that an ancient demonic emperor had once used this move to destroy a continent. Not only that, but all the living creatures on the continent, mountains, rivers, oceans, everything was annihilated by this move. The 5 elements Saber Saint did not dare to take the Xiaodi's move head-on. He retreated continuously, not even daring to take the Emperor Jar. He fled into the distance. Even if the five elements Saber Saint was a half-step celestial being, he would not take the move head-on. You're fast. The Shouty's eyes were cold as he watched the five elements Saber Saint flee. The Shouty's aura weakened a little after he used this move. The destruction of heaven and earth was Shouty's trump card. Once he used it, it would consume a lot of his energy. However, it was worth it to force the five elements Saber Saint to retreat. Other than the five elements Saber Saint, no one else was qualified to compete with him for the Emperor Jar. Give it to me. The Shouty immediately reached out to grab the Emperor Jar. But at this moment, the Emperor Jar slowly rotated. Just as the Shouty's hand was about to grab it, it suddenly transformed into a spear. The spear of the human emperor. Boom. Chu Fengmian grabbed the spear and thrust it at the Shouty's palm. Chapter 1594. The young emperor had just fought with the five elements Saber Saint for the Emperor Jar. This gave Chu Fengmian a chance to catch his breath. Although it was only a breath's time, it was enough for him to recover and gather spiritual power with the recovery power of his divine pulse. Chu Fengmian poured all the power in his body into the Emperor Jar. Just as the young emperor forced the five elements Saber Saint to retreat and was about to snatch the Emperor Jar transformed into a spear. It turned into the Emperor's spear, the sharpest blade in Chu Fengmian's hand, and blasted toward the young emperor. If it were any other martial artist, even if they were a half-step to the celestial being realm, after suffering such a serious injury, it would be difficult for them to recover within a breath. But Chu Fengmian did it. He gathered all his power on the Emperor's spear and blasted it toward the young emperor. The Emperor's spear was the sharpest weapon of the ancient human emperor. Now, the Emperor's spear condensed from Chu Fengmian's power had some of the sharpness of the real Emperor's spear. In an instant, the human Emperor's spear pierced through the young Emperor's palm, leaving a bloody hole in it. Then, the surging spiritual energy struck Shouty's palm. Under the bombardment of this power, Shouty's palm was torn apart and exploded. In the sky, the young Emperor's palm exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Damn it! Damn it! The young Emperor did not expect Chu Fengmian to recover and counterattack in such a short time. The power of the Emperor's spear was beyond the young Emperor's expectation. Although the young Emperor was strong, he had not stepped into the celestial being realm. Although the Emperor Jar was broken, it still had the power of an ultimate immortal weapon. The moment the Emperor's spear pierced the young Emperor's palm, his palm was blasted apart. In the young Emperor's eyes, Chu Fengmian's strength was like an ant, or even worse, an existence that he could crush at will. However, this ant had repeatedly ruined his plans. Shouty could no longer hold it in. If it weren't for the fact that Chu Fengmian had once refined the bronze heavenly demon skeleton and possessed the secret to step into the immortal real body, the Shao Emperor would have already killed him. This emperor wants to see how long you can struggle for. Suppress him. Shao Di stared at Chu Fengmian and roared. It seemed that he was truly angry. Demonic will filled the air, and with a single thought, his shattered right hand reformed. Then, he reached out to grab Chu Fengmian. The power of this palm was countless times more tyrannical than the previous one. It firmly suppressed Chu Fengmian's body, not intending to give Chu Fengmian a second chance to resist. Run! Chu Fengmian knew very well that his strength was far from enough to contend with a young emperor. Chu Fengmian was able to break Shao Di's palm because Shao Di was too careless to notice Chu Fengmian. Moreover, Shao Di had already wasted a lot of energy to force the five elements Saber Saint back. If they really fought, Chu Fengmian would not be a match for Shao Di even if he had the Emperor Jar. The huge gap between their realms was not something that could be made up for by chance. Unless Chu Fengmian took another step forward and stepped into the realm of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, he would never be able to fight Shao Di. Tianlong transformation. The moment Chu Fengmian made his move, he had accumulated enough energy in his body. Just as Shao Di was about to attack again, Chu Fengmian's body flashed, and he suddenly flew toward the entrance of the Buddhist temple. Without Xiao Di's restriction, Chu Fengmian's body flew into the entrance of the Buddhist temple in a flash. 5 Elements Seal. The 5 Elements Saber Saint in the sky saw that Chu Fengmian was about to fly into the Buddhist temple. He immediately acted and gathered his spiritual power. The power of 5 elements gathered in the 5 Elements Saber Saint's palm and was injected into the entrance of the Buddhist temple, forming a sealing formation. Too late. 3 Suns Blazing Sword. Chu Fengmian did not retreat in the face of the 5 Elements seal. He struck out with both swords. A colorless flame gathered above him, and he slashed out in a flash. The blazing flame wrapped around the 2-sword chi and slashed at the 5 Elements seal, creating a crack in it. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian's conveyance light followed closely behind. He suddenly entered the crack and rushed into the Buddhist temple. The moment Xiao Di and the 5 Elements Saber Saint chased after him, Chu Fengmian had already stepped into the Buddhist temple. After him, Xiao Di did not even look at the 5 Elements Saber Saint. His body flashed, and he also stepped into the Buddhist temple. The 5 Elements Saber Saint followed closely behind. As the 5 Elements reversal formation was shattered, countless Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations also rushed into the temple. In the Buddhist temple, Chu Fengmian's body flashed again and again. He did not dare to stay any longer. Chu Fengmian knew that Xiao Di and the 5 Elements Saber Saint would not let him go so easily. Not long after Chu Fengmian stepped into the Buddhist temple, countless auras descended upon it. Xiao Di and the 5 Elements Saber Saint were among them. More Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations had also stepped into the Buddhist temple. Let's go! Chu Fengmian's body flashed again and again. He traveled for thousands of miles before slowly coming to a stop. Chu Fengmian could no longer detect the presence of any martial artists within a radius of 10 miles. Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness was greatly suppressed when he entered the Buddhist temple. It was as if this restriction existed naturally in the Buddhist temple. It was enough to suppress a martial artist's spiritual consciousness. Outside, Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness could easily scan the surrounding hundreds of miles. But here, he could only scan a radius of 10 miles. Although it was inconvenient, it was a good thing for Chu Fengmian. If his spiritual consciousness was completely suppressed, it would not be so easy for Xiao Di and the 5 Elements Saber Saint to find Chu Fengmian. It was enough for Chu Fengmian to take a breath. This Buddhist temple is so desolate. Chu Fengmian stopped and was finally able to carefully observe every movement in the surroundings. This Buddhist temple looked majestic and glorious from the outside. But once inside, Chu Fengmian looked around and found that it was a wasteland. There were no martial artists within a radius of 10 miles on this wasteland. Not to mention martial artists, even living creatures and plants were absent. It was desolate to the extreme. As for the countless treasure lights that appeared before, they were not detected at all. If Chu Fengmian hadn't been certain that this was a Buddhist temple, he wouldn't have been able to imagine that the interior of this majestic Buddhist temple was actually so desolate. Chapter 1595. Let's recover first. The interior of the temple was as big as a small world. It was probably bigger than any of the 9 domains. Especially under the suppression of the restriction, Chu Fengmian could only observe the situation within a radius of 10 miles. What Chu Fengmian could see was only the tip of the iceberg. The treasure light in the temple could not be fake. However, Chu Fengmian had not found where it was hidden. Chu Fengmian glanced around and then looked around. He was searching for something. Chu Fengmian glanced around. Suddenly, his body flashed and entered a huge rock. Immediately, he sat down cross-legged and began to recover from the injuries on his body. This is it. It should be safe enough. Chu Fengmian was inside the boulder, condensing his spiritual power to set up countless restrictions to conceal his aura. In this wasteland, one's spiritual sense was already restricted. With the addition of this restriction, Chu Feng should be incomparably safe within this huge rock unless there was an expert who specifically came to investigate. After doing all this, Chu Fengmian sat on the rock and closed his eyes, slowly inspecting the condition of his body. After observing the condition of Chu Fengmian's body, Chu Fengmian discovered that his injuries were more serious than he had imagined. More than half of the 129,600 flesh and blood crystals were now covered with cracks. As long as these cracks received a few more impacts, they would shatter once again. Although Chu Fengmian would not die at that time, he would have to rebuild his body. Once that happened, he would have to abandon this half-step immortal body completely. It would have a huge impact on Chu Fengmian's strength then. The young emperor didn't kill him. Otherwise, his body would have been shattered even if he didn't die. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but whisper. What Chu Fengmian really suffered was the aftermath of the young emperor's palm. The young emperor didn't kill Chu Fengmian because he wanted to keep Chu Fengmian's body so that he could study the mysteries of the immortal body. Even so, Chu Fengmian's body was seriously injured. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian could feel it. Inside Chu Fengmian's body, the sacred tree began to emit spiritual energy to restore Chu Fengmian's flesh and blood crystal. The cracks on the flesh and blood crystals were constantly mended. However, using the power of the Tree of God to recover, it would take a long time for him to fully recover. With a thought, Chu Fengmian took out 2 spatial rings. They belonged to Ancestor by Luo and the 5 Elements Saber Master. Previously, in order to step into the Emperor realm, Chu Fengmian had used up all the saint pills he had accumulated in his empty ring. However, Chu Fengmian still managed to kill Progenitor Biluo and the 5 Elements Saber Progenitor at the Tyrannical Lion Progenitor's cave. Their spatial rings were in Chu Fengmian's hands. Chu Fengmian opened them and his mind moved. Dozens of Saint Elixir pills flew out. Ancestor by Luo and the 5 Elements Saber Master had also obtained countless treasures in the 9 domains. Chu Fengmian activated the heaven-devouring secret technique and immediately swallowed all the Saint Elixir pills. As the heaven-devouring secret technique was activated, the Saint Elixir pills were immediately crushed and turned into extremely pure medicinal efficacies that poured into Chu Fengmian's body. The medicinal efficacies entered his body and fell into the flesh and blood crystals, completely mending the cracks on them. Fortunately, there are still some Saint Elixir pills that can heal the injuries. Otherwise, it would take a long time to completely heal the flesh and blood crystals. The Saint Elixir pills in the 5 Elements Saber Masters and Ancestor by Luo's spatial rings were almost all ancient Saint Elixir pills that were effective for the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. All of them were of the highest quality among Saint Elixir pills. Even so, Chu Fengmian still had to spend dozens of Saint Elixir pills to finally heal all the cracks on his flesh and blood crystal. It's no wonder that many 9 tribulations Emperor Gu couldn't find Saint Elixir pills to heal their injuries when they were seriously injured. They could only go into seclusion to heal their injuries bit by bit. I'm afraid not many people would be so extravagant to spend so much wealth. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the dozens of Saint Elixir pills in the spatial rings. The stronger Chu Fengmian's physical body was now, the more Saint Elixir pills he would need to spend to heal his body once he was injured. For example, when cultivators were at a lower realm, they could buy Saint Elixir pills directly and recover in a few days if they were injured in a fight. However, when one reached the Emperor realm, or even Emperor Gu's realm, once they were injured, many Emperor Gu could only go into seclusion to heal their injuries bit by bit. The value of an ancient Saint Elixir was extremely high. Even Emperor Gu couldn't afford it. If Chu Fengmian hadn't killed the 5 Elements Saber Master and Ancestor by Luo and obtained their spatial rings, he would have to go into seclusion to heal his injuries now. I've gained a lot from this battle. I finally know how terrifying a half-step celestial being realm is. Chu Fengmian slowly got up. The aura on his body was much stronger than before. Destruction and reconstruction. Such a life-and-death battle was extremely beneficial for his future cultivation. However, Chu Fengmian also knew that he was lucky to be able to escape this time. If Chu Fengmian encountered a half-step celestial being realm master next time, he must be fully prepared. I wonder how the Yen Emperor and senior sister are doing. They must have entered the temple as well. In this Buddhist temple, spiritual sense was limited. Once a cultivator entered the Buddhist temple, they would have to move forward without any guidance. Therefore, even if Qing Meng and Emperor Yen came to this Buddhist temple, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to find them. Let's explore this area first. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed and walked out of the boulder. Now that Chu Fengmian's injuries had completely healed, unless he encountered a half-step celestial being realm master, Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of encountering the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian looked around and flew in a direction, intending to explore the situation in this wilderness first. Boom! Suddenly, a surge of spiritual power broke through the air. A figure seemed to have sensed Chu Fengmian's existence, and suddenly flew towards him. Escaping light? Could it be another cultivator? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. He suddenly looked at the escaping light and saw a figure appear in the escaping light. The moment the figure approached Chu Fengmian, the figure in the escaping light suddenly attacked and bombarded Chu Fengmian with a palm. Chapter 1596. As the figure approached, Chu Fengmian realized that it was a young man whose realm was at the level of 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. The young man took the initiative to attack when he saw Chu Fengmian. He aimed his palm at Chu Fengmian's chest. Courting death. Chu Fengmian's eyes were extremely cold. With Chu Fengmian's strength, he could kill 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Now, a mere 8 tribulations Emperor Gu dared to attack Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian also attacked with his palm. It collided with the young man's palm. Vajra Sun Palm? A Buddhist warrior? Is he from the Pure Land star field? When the two forces collided, Chu Fengmian's eyes suddenly revealed a bit of surprise. The power contained in this palm was the power of Buddhism. Chu Fengmian originally thought that the person who hated him and attacked him without any explanation must be a warrior from one of the 3 superpowers. Unexpectedly, it was a Buddhist. Now, the Buddhists were all in the Pure Land star field. Chu Fengmian had no enmity with the Pure Land star field. However, since he dared to attack Chu Fengmian didn't care whether he was a warrior from the Pure Land star field or not. Boom! The palm hit the young man's chest fiercely. The young man's body was sent flying hundreds of meters away. However, he stabilized his body and immediately rushed toward Chu Fengmian again. What? Chu Fengmian was extremely surprised. Although the palm just now wasn't Chu Fengmian's full strength, it was enough to make a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu suffer. For 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, he would probably be killed by the power of the palm just now. Even if he was an evildoer among the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, he would be seriously injured by the power of the palm just now. But now, this young man seemed to be only slightly injured? He even counterattacked Chu Fengmian. Boom! While Chu Fengmian was still in shock, the young man approached again and attacked with his palm again. Under the young man's palm, countless flames suddenly surged out. This flame was pure red in color. It was the karmic fire, a unique flame of the Buddhist sect. It was said that the karmic fire unleashed by the Buddha, who was at the pinnacle of Buddhism, was no less powerful than the pure yang heavenly fire. Suddenly, the flaming palm blasted toward Chu Fengmian. You're courting death. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with murderous intent. This time, he didn't hold back anymore. He condensed spiritual power in his palm. The dragons roared as Chu Fengmian used the first move of the progenitor's fist. He punched out, shattering the fiery palm. Soon after, Chu Fengmian's body flashed and arrived in front of the young man. He slammed his palm on the young man's chest. A palm strike blasted a bloody hole in the young man's chest. However, Chu Fengmian suddenly frowned. Not a single drop of blood flowed out from the young man's chest. This person isn't alive. While Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with surprise, the young man attacked again. Even Emperor Gu would need to reconstruct his chest after his chest was pierced. But this young man wasn't affected at all. The moment he approached Chu Fengmian, he attacked Chu Fengmian again. The martial skills they were using were all pure Buddhist martial skills. Break! Chu Fengmian pointed his finger and shattered the young man's body. The young man's body shattered and fell to the ground. It was incomparably heavy. Chu Fengmian touched it and felt like metal. Is this a puppet? Chu Fengmian looked at the young man's body on the ground and suddenly thought of something. This young man was actually not a living person. Instead, he was a puppet. Indeed, this young man didn't talk to Chu Fengmian when he attacked. It seemed like he didn't have any consciousness. But although he didn't have any consciousness, the young man's martial arts were preserved. His martial arts were incomparably pure, far surpassing the level of a puppet. For example, although ordinary puppets had great strength and tyrannical bodies, they were still no match for martial artists. The biggest difference was the control of martial arts. Mysterious martial arts were enough to defeat 10 martial artists. Therefore, only low-level martial artists would be afraid of puppets. For martial artists above life and death realm, puppets weren't worth mentioning. But although this young man was a puppet, he had preserved his martial arts. Plus, he had the great strength and sturdy body of a puppet. This young man was probably even more difficult to deal with than 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. If a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was pestered by this young man, he would have to spend a lot of effort to deal with him. How could such a puppet appear in a Buddhist temple? Refining a living person into a puppet isn't a Buddhist practice. Chu Fengmian observed the shattered puppet on the ground and couldn't help but mutter to himself. Although the secret techniques of the Buddhist sects were strange, most of them were brainwashing and controlling technique. It was enough to make a cultivator do things for the Buddhist sections. But this puppet was refined from a living person. It was obviously not a Buddhist practice. On the contrary, it was more like a demonic practice. Chu Fengmian carefully observed. Suddenly, the shattered puppet began to gradually disperse. The metal-like hard pieces on it gradually dissipated, and it turned into a normal corpse. Chu Fengmian saw a few demonic patterns on the corpse, which immediately confirmed his guess. This should be the demonic path of the demonic path. The demonic path was said to be one of the most vicious secret techniques of the ancient demonic path. It used a living person as the foundation and refined many methods to refine them into a demonic puppet. This kind of demonic puppet had its consciousness erased, and it always obeyed the orders of its master. But it had inherited the martial arts and strength of the martial artists when they were alive. In addition to the sturdy body of the puppet, it was an extremely terrifying existence. Once, when the 6 demonic paths ruled the 9 regions, they secretly captured many experts and refined them into demonic puppets. Later on, the 6 demonic paths were jointly overthrown and destroyed by the martial artists of the 9 regions. But if it was just a demonic puppet, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be surprised. Traces of demonic puppets could be found in many ancient demonic path ruins. But here, in this wasteland, was a Buddhist temple. There were actually demonic puppets in the Buddhist temple. Furthermore, the young man being refined was a Buddhist cultivator. There's something strange in this wasteland. Chu Fengmian moved and flew up from the wasteland again. But this time, Chu Fengmian was paying attention to every movement in the surroundings. Chapter 1597. Just a moment ago, the demonic puppet had suddenly launched an attack on Chu Fengmian when it was 10 miles away from him. Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness could not detect anything beyond 10 miles. He only reacted when the demonic puppet approached him. Fortunately, the strength of the demonic puppet was not strong. It was only in the realm of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu, which gave Chu Fengmian a chance to react. However, if he encountered a demonic puppet at the level of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, or even stronger, Chu Fengmian might not be able to react in time. The demonic puppet was originally more difficult to deal with than the warriors of the same realm. In addition, the spiritual consciousness was suppressed in this wasteland, so it was difficult to even give an early warning. Chu Fengmian explored in the wasteland, paying attention to every movement around him at all times. In the wasteland, Chu Fengmian walked for hundreds of miles, but the surrounding area was still barren. There were no living creatures. Chu Fengmian did not even encounter the other warriors who entered the Buddhist temple, Emperor Gu. It was as if Chu Fengmian was alone in this wasteland. Boom! A conveyance light suddenly broke through the air. Immediately, a figure rushed in front of Chu Fengmian, and a fist wind blasted toward Chu Fengmian without hesitation. As the fist blasted toward Chu Fengmian, Buddha light appeared all over the sky and turned into a Buddha shadow. It condensed on the fist and blasted toward Chu Fengmian. Break for me! Chu Fengmian was already prepared. The moment the fist blasted toward him, Chu Fengmian suddenly attacked. Several sword chi from the world's edge sword box immediately flew out from his back. Bang! The fist wind Buddha shadow was destroyed on the spot, and several sword auras slashed towards the figure. Not long after, the middle-aged man's body fell to the ground. His body was shattered by the sword aura. A metallic luster could be seen on the middle-aged man's body. The seventh one. Chu Fengmian's face was calm and indifferent. He was already used to it. After Chu Fengmian came to the wasteland, this was already the seventh demonic puppet to attack him. The 7 demonic puppets that Chu Fengmian encountered, without exception, all of them displayed Buddhist martial skills. Moreover, each of them seemed to be strong. The weakest one had reached the realm of the 7 tribulations Emperor Gu, while the strongest one had reached the peak of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. The peak 8 tribulations Emperor Gu was refined into a demonic puppet. His strength was much stronger than the ordinary 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Was much stronger than him. It was in the wasteland was wasteland. As long as it was a demon puppet Emperor Gu, was as long as he walked puppet attacked? Was puppet. These demonic puppet Emperor Gu did not have consciousness. They only retained the martial skills that they had when they were alive. Therefore, they did not hesitate to attack Chu Fengmian and wanted to kill him. In this wasteland, Chu Fengmian did not find anything other than these demonic puppet Emperor Gu. However, Chu Fengmian noticed that as he advanced in this direction, he encountered more and more demonic puppet. Previously, Chu Fengmian would only encounter one demonic puppet Emperor Gu when he moved forward 100 miles. Now, a demonic puppet Emperor Gu would suddenly appear and attack Chu Fengmian every 10 miles, 20 miles. The more demonic puppet Emperor Gu appeared, the more it proved that Chu Fengmian was moving in a good direction. Now, Chu Fengmian should be moving towards the center of the wasteland. Let's go. Chu Fengmian glanced around. His body flickered as he walked towards that direction. Not long after Chu Fengmian left, 2 figures suddenly appeared at the place where Chu Fengmian was just a moment ago. They were 2 bald men wearing a unique kasaya. This attire could only be worn by Buddhist disciples. The 2 figures appeared not far from where Chu Fengmian was and stared at Chu Fengmian's departing figure. Why didn't you let me kill him just now? This man has a lot of treasures and even an extreme immortal weapon. If we kill him, we will give the extreme immortal weapon to the Buddha Lord and get great benefit. One of the figures stared at Chu Fengmian's departing figure and said coldly, "This kid is not easy to kill. Young Emperor and 5 elements Saber Saint, 2 half-step celestial being experts, failed to kill him. We can't alert him." The other figure said slowly, "At first, I thought that this was a Buddhist temple. I didn't expect it to be a devil's domain. Looks like it's a devil's domain that appeared after a Buddha of our Buddhist sect turned into a devil's domain. However, many of the seals here are still Buddhist seals. They are useless against us. This time, everyone who enters this Buddhist temple will be suppressed by the restrictions here. Only our Buddhist sect's people will not be suppressed. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Our Pure Land star region has always wanted to spread the glory of Buddhism to other star regions, but we never had the chance. This time, as long as we take action and wipe out all the martialists who entered, the Daluotian star region and the Yenluo star region won't be able to resist our Pure Land star region. According to the Lord Buddha, there should be 4 Vajra protectors in this Buddhist temple. Let's go look for these 4 Vajra protectors first. With the help of these 4 Vajra protectors, even the half-step celestial realm expert is no match for us. The Buddhist sect disciple looked in the direction Chu Fengmian had left and said, "As for this kid, he can't escape. Now that the ground is full of demonic puppets, let these demonic puppets deal with him first. We'd better go look for the 4 Vajra protectors first." As they spoke, the 2 Buddhist sect disciples disappeared without a trace. Boom! On the other side, 3 figures suddenly attacked Chu Fengmian. Without exception, these 3 figures were all demonic puppets. The 3 demonic puppets were at the peak of the 8th tribulation Emperor Gu. Even with their joint attack, Chu Fengmian was forced to retreat. These demonic puppets are really powerful. All of them are practicing Buddhist martial Tao. The martial Tao that they use complements each other. Moreover, they are not afraid of death. Every move is fierce. When they join forces, they are even more difficult to deal with. Chu Fengmian was forced to retreat. Looking at the 3 demonic puppets, his eyes flickered. He had not encountered any demonic puppets at the level of the 9th tribulation Emperor Gu. Just these 3 demonic puppets at the peak of the 8th tribulation Emperor Gu were enough for Chu Fengmian to deal with. Chapter 1598. The bodies of these demonic puppets had undergone special refinement and were much stronger than the bodies of martial artists in the same realm. It was impossible to break the bodies of these demonic puppets with pure strength. Even after withstanding the power of the primogenitor's first move, it was still difficult to kill a demonic puppet. In addition, these demonic puppets were extremely strong and were perfect fighting machines. It was no wonder that the demonic puppets of the 6 Paths demon sects were invincible. Even the most powerful experts of that era had died under the siege of the demonic puppet. Now, Chu Fengmian was facing 3 demonic puppets. Even so, he felt that it was difficult to deal with them. It was said that the demonic puppets of the 6 Paths demon sects had more than 10,000 demonic puppets. Chu Fengmian could not imagine how terrifying their combined strength would be. While Chu Fengmian was thinking, the 3 demonic puppets attacked him at the same time. The 3 demonic puppets attacked at the same time. Buddhist light appeared and gathered on their fists. It turned into a huge pagoda and suppressed Chu Fengmian. Sword! Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. He did not waste any more time and moved his palm. The ancestral dragon's supreme sword was unsheathed. Spiritual energy was attached to the blade of the sword. The sword slashed towards the sky and the pagoda was slashed apart. Soon after, the sword slashed onto the bodies of the 3 demonic puppets. Swoosh! The 3 demonic puppets were cut in half at the waist. They lost their strength and fell to the ground. The 3 demonic puppets were difficult to deal with. However, they were only at the strength of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. The only tricky part was the bodies of these demonic puppets. Although the bodies of the demonic puppets were tough, they could only withstand a brute force attack. They could not withstand Chu Fengmian's sword. The 3 demonic puppets were killed with a single slash. After killing the 3 demonic puppets, Chu Fengmian wanted to continue moving forward. However, all of a sudden, a golden pearl the size of a longan rolled out from one of the demon puppets. Chu Fengmian sensed an incomparably pure spiritual power and surging Buddhist power from the golden bead. This is... Chu Fengmian extended his hand and waved it. The longan-sized golden bead landed in his palm. Is this the Buddhist Sarira in the records? Chu Fengmian looked at the golden bead and thought of something. In some ancient records, many Buddhist experts would condense a Buddhist Sarira within their bodies. The Saraira was the source of power for the Buddhist sections. However, only powerful Buddhist disciples had the ability to condense a Saraira. Chu Fengmian had already killed 10 demonic puppets, but this was the first time he had seen this Buddhist relic. With such pure spiritual energy, it must be a Buddhist relic. Chu Fengmian observed for a while and was sure of it. This Buddhist Saraira was very similar to the beast cores of the beast clan. They were both sources of power. However, the Buddhist sect's Saraira was, after all, a cultivator's spiritual energy. It was completely different from the demonic energy in the demonic core. It was incomparably pure spiritual energy. It is said that in the ancient times, the Buddhist Saraira was a great tonic. Its value was much higher than many ancient sacred medicines. It was the best tonic to consolidate one's realm. Chu Fengmian merely held the Buddhist Saraira in his palm, and he could feel the incomparably pure spiritual energy in it. Feeling the spiritual energy, Chu Fengmian's bloodline was thirsting for it. Vaguely, the ancient war dragon's blood essence wanted to devour the Buddhist Saraira to make a breakthrough. Devour. Chu Fengmian took a few glances at it and activated the sky-devouring secret skill. The Buddhist Saraira was devoured by the sky-devouring secret skill. It immediately shattered and turned into an incomparably pure spiritual energy, pouring into Chu Fengmian's body. The Buddhist Saraira contained the purest spiritual energy that a Buddhist expert had accumulated in his life. It was almost free of any impurities after being refined. The pure spiritual energy poured into Chu Fengmian's body. In Chu Fengmian's bloodline, drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence began to devour the pure spiritual energy. After devouring enough spiritual energy, the drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence began to transform. As lines of runes condensed in this drop of ancient war dragon's blood essence, another drop of ancient war dragon's blood essence was transformed into the Dragon Emperor's blood essence. The power contained in it was 100 times more powerful. This kind of transformation lasted for half a minute. In Chu Fengmian's body, another 50 drops of ancient war dragon's blood essence were transformed into the Dragon Emperor's blood essence. The spiritual energy contained in this Buddhist Saraira is actually comparable to the spiritual energy contained in the blood essence of a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian was shocked when he checked the result. This Buddhist Saraira was left behind by a Buddhist disciple in the realm of 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. The difference in power between an 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu and a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was at least 5 times. However, this Buddhist Saraira was actually comparable to the power contained in the blood essence of a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu at the level of 5 elements Saber Master. No wonder this Buddhist Saraira was so valuable in ancient times. This is indeed the best treasure to consolidate one's realm and replenish spiritual energy. Chu Fengmian was pleasantly surprised. What Chu Fengmian lacked now was power. With the transformation of another part of the Dragon Emperor's blood essence, Chu Fengmian's power became even more powerful. Just a Buddhist Saraira at the level of 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu has such pure spiritual energy. If it's a Buddhist Saraira at the level of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, how pure would the spiritual energy contained in it be? Chu Fengmian's heart skipped a beat. He could not help but look forward to it. Originally, the attacks of these demon puppets had already irritated Chu Fengmian. However, after obtaining this Buddhist Saraira and obtaining the benefits within, Chu Fengmian now wanted more demon puppets to attack Chu Fengmian. It would be best if they were demon puppets at the level of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu to attack Chu Fengmian. There is no Buddhist Saraira among the other two. It seems that they were not strong enough when they were alive. Chu Fengmian rummaged through the 3 demon puppets on the ground. Only one of them had a Buddhist Saraira. There was no trace of a Buddhist Saraira among the other 2. It seemed that they were not strong enough when they were alive and were not qualified to condense a Buddhist Saraira. Only the genius experts of Buddhism had the ability to condense a Buddhist Saraira. Not every Buddhist disciple could condense one. Chapter 1599. It seemed that Chu Fengmian had to try his luck even if he wanted to kill demonic puppets. Now, Chu Fengmian had to kill 10 demonic puppets to obtain this Buddhist Sarira. It was enough to show the preciousness of this Buddhist Sarira. For Chu Fengmian, this Buddhist Sarira contained enough spiritual energy to transform about 50 drops of Dragon Emperor blood essence. It was comparable to the benefits Chu Fengmian obtained from killing a 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Such benefits, the stronger the martial artist of Buddhism, the greater the chances of condensing a Buddhist Sarira. After knowing the benefits of this Buddhist Sarira, Chu Fengmian no longer concealed his aura as he traversed through the wilderness. The demonic puppets within a radius of 10 miles could clearly sense Chu Fengmian's aura. Without any explanation, they flew towards Chu Fengmian, intending to kill him. These demonic puppets had no consciousness. The only thing they had in common was that they would attack any life they saw. It was no wonder that this wilderness was so desolate. Not only martial artists but also demonic beasts and plants. Perhaps they had all been killed by these demonic puppets. Here they come. Chu Fengmian saw several conveyance lights flying towards Chu Fengmian from afar. These demonic puppets had no consciousness, so they did not know how to launch a sneak attack. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw 3 more demonic puppets being lured over by Chu Fengmian. The strength of these 3 demonic puppets was at the peak of 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm. As Chu Fengmian went deeper into the wilderness, the demonic puppets he encountered became stronger and stronger. Many of them were at the peak of 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm. Sword out! Seeing the 3 demonic puppets rushing over, Chu Fengmian immediately let out a long roar and suddenly struck out with the sword in his hand. The sword was unsheathed. Spiritual energy condensed on the sword and turned into a sword chi, sweeping towards the 3 demonic puppets. Boom! Facing the attack of the sword chi, the 3 demonic puppets activated their spiritual energy at the same time and stood together. Rays of golden light appeared on their bodies and condensed on their bodies. Diamond-glazed body. Chu Fengmian recognized it at a glance. The golden light condensed on these 3 people was one of the most mysterious Buddhist techniques, the Vajra-glazed body. It was said that if this Vajra-glazed body was cultivated to the great mastery level, it would be enough to resist the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu with one's physical body. In ancient times, one of the branches of Buddhism, the Vajra sect, specialized in the Vajra-glazed body. Chu Fengmian had heard about the strength of the Vajra-glazed body in ancient books. However, this was the first time Chu Fengmian had seen it with his own eyes. The golden light on the 3 demonic puppets began to condense and fuse together. Apparently, they had some consciousness and joined forces to face Chu Fengmian's sword light. These 3 demonic puppets already had the consciousness to join forces against the enemy. Chu Fengmian had also discovered that the higher the cultivation of the demonic puppets, the more consciousness they would retain. Not only did they retain their martial arts, but they also knew how to use tactics like creating a diversion to the east and attacking the west. This made Chu Fengmian a little worried. Demonic puppets were not easy to deal with. Chu Fengmian could easily kill them because these demonic puppets were boring. Chu Fengmian was not afraid if they had no consciousness and only brute force. However, if some of the demonic puppets had consciousness and even knew how to launch sneak attacks, it would be troublesome. While Chu Fengmian was observing the 3 demonic puppets and pondering, the 3 demonic puppets had already collided with Chu Fengmian's sword light in the air. The sword light swept across the 3 demonic puppets, breaking the golden light on their bodies in an instant. Then, the sword light chopped the 3 demonic puppets. Crack! The 3 demonic puppets were cut in half at the waist at the same time. They fell to the ground and lost their strength. The great mastery of the Vajra-glazed body should have a glazed treasure light. These 3 demonic puppets obviously had not reached this stage. Even if the 3 of them joined forces, they still could not resist Chu Fengmian's sword light. Chu Fengmian walked over and looked through the 3 demon puppets. Soon after, He found a golden pearl the size of a dragon's eye from one of them. Another Buddhist Sarira. Chu Fengmian revealed a smile on his face. This time, he really had some gains. He had obtained another Buddhist Sarira. Chu Fengmian activated the sky-devouring secret technique and put the Buddhist Sarira into it to start refining. Soon, the pure spiritual energy rushed into Chu Fengmian's body. Drops of ancient war dragon blood essence crazily devoured the spiritual energy and turned into drops of dragon emperor blood essence. Half a minute later, Chu Fengmian opened his eyes. In his body, there were another 40 drops of war dragon blood essence that had been transformed into dragon emperor blood essence. The spiritual energy contained in this Buddhist Sarira was slightly weaker than the previous one. Therefore, the effect was not as good. The spiritual energy contained in the Buddhist Sarira was closely related to the strength of the Buddhist warrior when he was alive. The spiritual energy contained in the Buddhist Sarira left behind by the expert was purer. It was said that the Buddhist Sarira left behind by the Buddha was enough to make a person reach the sky in a single bound. Even if it was obtained by a warrior who had never cultivated, it was enough to step into the celestial realm. However, this rumor was originally illusory. The Buddha was an existence comparable to the immortal emperor. He was an invincible and tyrannical existence in any era. It was almost impossible for the Buddha to fall. If the ancestral Buddha had truly fallen within this Buddhist temple, being able to obtain the ancestral Buddha's Sarira would be a truly great opportunity. Chu Fengmian could not help but think, but soon he shook his head. Once the Buddhist Sarira appeared, the young emperor, the 5 elements saber saint, and the others would fight over it. It was more precious than the fragments of an extreme immortal weapon. Even if the Buddhist Sarira really existed in this Buddhist temple, it would be extremely difficult to obtain it. What Chu Fengmian needed now was to improve his strength. At least, he would have the strength to protect himself when facing the 5 elements saber saint, the young emperor, and the others. The Buddhist Sarira provided Chu Fengmian with a shortcut to improve his strength. 3 days had passed. Chu Fengmian had been flying in the wilderness. It should be said that he had been luring the demonic puppets here. In 3 days, Chu Fengmian had killed 70 demonic puppets. From these demonic puppets, Chu Fengmian had obtained 11 Buddhist Sariras. One of the Buddhist Sarira was obtained by Chu Fengmian from a demonic puppet who had reached the realm of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. The spiritual energy contained in this Buddhist Sarira was 5 times more abundant than that of the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu's Buddhist Sarira. After devouring all the Buddhist Sarira, the amount of Dragon Emperor's blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body had reached a terrifying 2,000 drops. Chapter 1600. My strength has improved, but it's still far from enough to break through the realm. Chu Fengmian sat in a valley and slowly opened his eyes. Compared to 3 days ago, the aura on his body had become much stronger. The speed at which his strength was improving was simply too shocking. However, the improvement of Chu Fengmian's strength was mainly due to the effect of the Buddhist Sarira. Obtaining and refining a Buddhist relic was equivalent to obtaining the pure spirit energy that a Buddhist martial artist had accumulated for his entire life. It was with the help of these Buddhist Sarira that Chu Fengmian could improve so quickly. However, when Chu Fengmian opened his eyes, he frowned. The reason for that was because Chu Fengmian had suddenly discovered an incomparably fatal point. It was that the effects of the Buddhist Sarira had weakened. The spiritual energy of the Buddhist Sarira did not weaken, but the spiritual energy that Chu Fengmian obtained from refining it was getting less and less. Chu Fengmian felt this very clearly. It was like swallowing spiritual elixirs and divine elixirs. The more divine elixirs were swallowed, the weaker the effect would be. This was a kind of resistance. Whether it was divine elixirs, blood essence, or even heavenly wonders, once swallowed too much, the effect would weaken. The same was true for the Buddhist Sarira. After swallowing a dozen Buddhist Sarira, Chu Fengmian clearly felt that he was now swallowing a Buddhist Saraira of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu's peak realm. The spiritual energy that he obtained was less than half of what he had swallowed at the beginning. Moreover, the spiritual energy that he obtained was getting less and less. As for the Buddhist Saraira of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu's realm, the spiritual energy was pure, so the resistance was less. However, he could only obtain 90% of the spiritual energy that he had before. This was undoubtedly not good news for Chu Fengmian. At least, his idea of using the Buddhist Saraira to improve his realm was shattered. Unless Chu Fengmian found a Buddhist Saraira of a higher level, he would have to swallow a dozen more. The Buddhist Saraira of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu's realm was useless to Chu Fengmian. If I want to devour now, I have to at least devour Buddhist relics of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu level. Buddhist relics of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu level are meaningless. Chu Fengmian looked at his palm. There were 2 Buddhist Sarairas in his hand, both of which belonged to Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian noticed that the effect of the Buddhist Saraira was weakening bit by bit, so he didn't continue to devour it. He could only place the 2 Buddhist relics in his hand into his spatial ring. However, if this Buddhist Saraira were to be sold outside, the price would be incomparably high. This was an extremely famous treasure even in the ancient times. If it were to be sold, many 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu would probably go bankrupt just to get one. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian didn't lack wealth. He could also give the Buddhist Saraira to Han Yueli, Luo Shi, and the others. It would be enough to increase their strength. As Chu Fengmian flew, he didn't let any of the demonic puppets he encountered escape. They were killed one by one. Among the Buddhist Saraira, Chu Fengmian only selected a few of the highest quality ones to refine. The rest were all placed into his spatial ring by Chu Fengmian. Is this the center of this wasteland? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. Suddenly, he saw a purple mist. This purple mist was so vast that he couldn't see the end of it. It shrouded the front. If Chu Fengmian wanted to move forward, he had to pass through this purple mist. Chu Fengmian glanced over. In this purple mist, he could vaguely see a few shadows shuttling back and forth. Many of these shadows were incomparably ferocious. The Devil Clan. Chu Fengmian saw a few of these shadows. He could tell that many of the existences in this purple mist were from the Devil Clan. This large purple mist was filled with incomparably pure devil will. A large number of Devil Clan members shuttled back and forth in it. Not only are there demonic puppets, but also such a large amount of devil will. Is this a Buddhist temple or a devil's den? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but say. At the same time, he observed this purple mist. Now, the path in front of Chu Fengmian was already shrouded by this purple mist. Apart from passing through this purple mist, he could only turn back the way he came. It took Chu Fengmian several days to get here. If he turned back the way he came, Chu Fengmian's several days of travel would be in vain. Let's go straight in, Chu Fengmian observed for a moment. Then, without hesitation, his figure flashed, turned into a ray of light, and directly rushed into the purple mist. As soon as he entered the purple mist, Chu Fengmian felt a lot of demonic intent invading his body. These devil wills intended to control Chu Fengmian and turn him into a servant of the devil will. Waves of devil will invaded Chu Fengmian's consciousness, trying to make him fall into madness. Countless illusions appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. Each scene was telling him that once he was invaded by the devil will, he would obtain endless power, tempting him to open his mind. Little devil will wants to invade me? King of inner demons. Chu Fengmian sneered. Behind him, the king of inner demons suddenly flew out. Chu Fengmian was someone who could subdue the king of inner demons. How could this little devil will invade his consciousness? As soon as the king of inner demons came out, he saw the devil will around him. He opened his mouth as if he saw a feast. Countless devil wills around Chu Fengmian were continuously devoured by the king of inner demons and turned into his power. Let's go. Chu Fengmian walked into the depths of the devil will. Woo 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 woo. The deeper they went, the denser the demonic will became. It was enough to faintly make out figures within. These figures were the devil clan who lived in the devil will. Many of them had no physical form and were born by the devil will. A gust of cold wind swept past. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind Chu Fengmian. It was a void devil without a physical form, and could condense in the devil will at any time. A living person? There hasn't been a living person in this wilderness for hundreds of thousands of years. I can't believe I've encountered one. Brat, prepare to be my feast. This was a void devil with the strength of the 7 calamities Emperor Gu. Although he was only the 7 calamities Emperor Gu, the void devil was extremely difficult to deal with. He was invincible in the devil will. He could condense his body again and again with the help of the devil will. He was almost immortal. The moment the void devil appeared, he opened his mouth and tried to devour Chu Fengmian's soul. Die. Facing such a void devil. Chapter 1601. The moment the colorless flame came into contact with the void demon, it immediately burned fiercely. It was extremely difficult for ordinary cultivators to deal with a void demon because the void demon could condense again and again from the demonic will, making it difficult to kill. But once the pure yang heavenly flame came into contact with it, the demonic will around the void demon was incinerated. Under the burning of the pure yang heavenly flame, the void demon's aura became weaker and weaker until it no longer existed. It was immediately destroyed. As Chu Fengmian killed the void devil, he sensed that the shadows within the demonic intent, which were originally restless, had retreated one after another. Chu Fengmian controlled the pure yang heavenly flame, which greatly restrained the void demons that were born from the demonic will. The pure yang heavenly flame was enough to incinerate the demonic will around them, making it impossible for them to use the demonic will to condense again. These demons can be used as supplements for the Heart Demon King. Heart Demon King. Chu Fengmian sneered as he looked at the countless demons fleeing around him. At his command, the Heart Demon King dived into the demonic will. Ah! For a moment, countless demons screamed miserably. Beside Chu Fengmian, countless demons were spying on him, intending to launch a sneak attack, but they were all captured by the Heart Demon King. They were ruthlessly devoured by the Heart Demon King. Every time it devoured a demon, the Heart Demon King's power would become much stronger. Normally, it was difficult for Chu Fengmian to find a large number of demons in the Daluo star field for the Heart Demon King to devour. Now it was the best opportunity. As Chu Fengmian flew forward, the Heart Demon King guarded Chu Fengmian's side and wantonly hunted the demons that intended to launch a sneak attack on Chu Fengmian. Among them, there were a few powerful demons that the Heart Demon King couldn't deal with, but Chu Fengmian personally killed them and let the Heart Demon King devour them. As it devoured more and more demons, the Heart Demon King's power became more and more tyrannical. Later on, when the Heart Demon King guarded Chu Fengmian, there were no demons that dared to approach Chu Fengmian. This demonic will is almost at its end. As Chu Fengmian walked, he noticed that the demonic will around him was getting weaker and weaker. It seemed that Chu Fengmian was about to pass through this demonic intent. As the demonic intent became extremely sparse, Chu Fengmian could see more clearly where he was looking. A valley had appeared not far in front of him. Suddenly, a golden dragon soared into the sky from the valley. This golden dragon was not a real golden dragon. It was formed from spiritual energy and was extremely dazzling. Is this the Holy Dragon Mystery Plane's summoning order? Chu Fengmian's expression changed slightly when he saw the golden dragon. This golden dragon was the summoning order of the Holy Dragon Secret Ground. It was enough to summon all the disciples in the surrounding Holy Dragon Secret Ground. Let's go and take a look. Chu Fengmian observed for a moment, then flew toward the golden dragon in a flash. Chu Fengmian still knew nothing about the Buddhist temple. It was extremely difficult for him to figure out the situation in the Buddhist temple by himself. It just so happened that he had bumped into other disciples of the Holy Dragon mystical ground. Chu Fengmian could ask them for some information. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered continuously. Soon, he was nearing the valley. His escape light gradually slowed down. Chu Fengmian did not enter rashly. Instead, he slowly approached the entrance of the valley. Just as Chu Fengmian approached, two figures flew toward him. "Who are you? Are you a disciple of the Holy Dragon Mystery Plane? Why is the disciple of that sect and that hall alone in this Buddhist temple?" These two figures were the disciples of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu. They should be the saints of the Holy Dragon Mystery Plane. However, their appearances were extremely unfamiliar. It was obvious that they had never seen Chu Fengmian before. They should be saints who were not in the Holy Lands and were training outside. When the two of them saw Chu Fengmian's arrival, their eyes were filled with vigilance. Before Chu Fengmian could speak, a familiar figure suddenly walked out from the valley. When he saw Chu Fengmian, he hurried over. "Junior brothers, this is Senior Brother Chu from the Holy Dragon sect." The figure arrived and said politely to Chu Fengmian, "I didn't expect to see Brother Chu again." This figure was Yan Hanshi. After parting ways in the pocket world, Chu Fengmian did not expect to meet Yan Hanshi again in the Buddhist temple. Holy Dragon sect? Chu Fengmian? The two Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu were shocked when they heard Yan Hanshi's words. They looked at Chu Fengmian with vigilance and even some hostility. Although it was just a glance, the two Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu's faces revealed smiles. However, this could not escape Chu Fengmian's eyes. "It turns out to be Senior Brother Chu. Please come in." This time, our Five Spirits sect happened to find traces of a treasure in the Buddhist temple. However, we are short of manpower. With Senior Brother Chu's help, it is like having the help of God. "Senior Brother Chu, please come into the valley to rest." With that, the two Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu opened up a path. Chu Fengmian sensed the strangeness, but his expression did not change. He took a step forward and stepped into the valley. Yan Hanshi followed Chu Fengmian into the valley. After entering the valley, Chu Fengmian sensed many auras. There were hundreds of Emperor Gu in the valley. They seemed to be the holy sons of the Five Spirits sect. However, many of them looked very unfamiliar. Chu Fengmian had never seen them before. "Junior Brother Yan, what happened? Who are these people?" Chu Fengmian's expression did not change, but he quietly transmitted his voice to Chu Fengmian. Among the Five Spirits sect's holy sons, many of them looked at Chu Fengmian with hostility. Chu Fengmian had saved many of the Five Spirits sect's holy sons in the Crimson Continent. Even if they did not know the others, they should not be so hostile to Chu Fengmian. Moreover, Chu Fengmian also found that, except for Yan Hanshi, Mu Lin and some other holy sons of the Five Spirits sect were no longer in the valley. These are also the holy sons of the Five Spirits sect. However, they belong to another faction. These people came to the 9 regions before us. Senior Mu Lin, I and the others came later. Senior Brother Mu Lin was attacked by the Demon Clan and was seriously injured. Now, he has returned to the Holy Land. Many of the Five Spirits sect's disciples were also seriously injured. I had no choice but to join forces with them. Chapter 1602. Little Emperor Yan? Chu Fengmian guessed when he heard the name. Perhaps this Little Emperor Yan was like Little Emperor Yi and Little Ju Di, one of the geniuses who had received a legacy of power in the Sacred Dragon Mystery Domain. Little Emperor Yi and Little Ju Di were both geniuses of the Holy Academy sect. The Five Spirits sect was also one of the 4 great sects of the Sacred Dragon Mystery Domain. Obviously, they were also geniuses who had received a legacy of power. However, they were not as famous as Little Emperor Yi and Little Ju Di. Geniuses who had received a legacy of power were almost invincible in the same realm. They could even fight across realms. For example, when Chu Fengmian had fought Little Emperor Yi, He was only a quasi-emperor. However, he was far more powerful than the average 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu. Once little Emperor Yi stepped into the ancient emperor realm, he would be like Chu Fengmian. He would be on equal footing with 9 Tribulations ancient emperors, or even stronger than ordinary ancient emperors. What is this little Emperor Yan's realm? Chu Fengmian asked Yan Hanshi without batting an eyelid. Little Emperor Yan is an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu. He went from quasi-emperor to 7th Tribulation Emperor Gu in a single step. He is a peerless genius. Yan Hanshi glanced at Chu Fengmian and slowly explained. Little Emperor Yan has only been cultivating in the Holy Land. He has not made a name for himself. His talent is no less than Little Emperor Yi and Little Ju Di. 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed. Emperor Gu, a peerless Emperor Gu. Such talent was no less than Qingming's. Moreover, Little Emperor Yan had received a legacy of power. He had the martial understanding of a half-step celestial realm cultivator. He was invincible in the same realm. Now it seemed that Chu Fengmian had underestimated the geniuses of the world. Furthermore, before this, Chu Fengmian had never heard of this little Emperor Yan. Unexpectedly, he was an exceptional existence like Emperor Gu. It seemed that there were still many geniuses among the various powers that Chu Fengmian had never heard of. The 9 regions upheaval this time attracted these geniuses over. With the realm of the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu and the inheritance of power, this little Emperor Yan was probably even more difficult to deal with than the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. However, Chu Fengmian had even killed the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu before. Naturally, he would not be afraid of this little Emperor Yan. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had a good relationship with the 5 Spirits sect. Chu Fengmian just wanted to inquire about the information in this Buddhist temple. He had no evil intentions. Yan Hanshi led Chu Fengmian into the valley. In this valley, countless restrictions were set up densely. Like an inescapable net, this valley had been turned into an incomparably sturdy old nest. Many of the restrictions were extremely mysterious. Even the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu would find it difficult to set them up. The remnant of the fire attribute spiritual power that was emitted seemed to be the work of the little Emperor Yan. If Chu Fengmian wanted to forcibly break these restrictions and rush in, he would need to use a lot of means. When the restrictions in this valley were combined, even if he encountered the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu's attack, it would be enough to resist for a period of time. Chu Fengmian followed behind Yan Hanshi and walked all the way in. After passing through the last restriction, they really came to the interior of the valley. The interior of this valley was densely packed with many caves. It seemed that they had been opened up by someone with power. In every cave there was an aura. Almost all of them were warriors above the realm of Emperor Gu. Without exception, all of them were chosens of the 5 Spirits sect. Among them, there was no lack of chosens of the 5 Spirits sect whose strength had reached the level of 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. They were much stronger than Yan Hanshi. Among this group of people, Yan Hanshi's strength was only around the middle. This is the foundation of the 5 Spirits sect. Chu Fengmian swept a glance and sighed in his heart. The Sacred Dragon Secret Dimension was indeed the number 1 among the 4 major forces of the Daluo star field. It had a deep foundation. There were so many chosens in the 5 Spirits sect. Among these chosens, there were many who had the opportunity to break through to the level of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. However, there were very few chosens who could break through to the level of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. After all, to step into the level of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, one had to have a lot of requirement. Not only did it require heaven-defying aptitude, but it also required a huge amount of wealth and resources. Without a fortuitous encounter, it was almost impossible to step into the level of 9 Emperor Gu. Yan Hanshi, didn't I ask you to go out and look for information? Why are you back? And who is the person beside you? From the largest cave, a figure suddenly walked out. This person had red hair, and his body exuded a terrifying fire spiritual energy. He was like a real god of fire. Once he was angry, he could burn all his enemies to ashes. This person's strength is not inferior to the 5 Elements Saber Grandmaster. Chu Fengmian sized up the red-haired man and saw his strength. This person's cultivation level was only that of 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. However, his strength and aura were almost no different from that of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. This person should be the genius of the 5 spirits sect that Yan Hanshi had mentioned, the Little Emperor Yan. Following the Little Emperor Yan were a few chosens of the 5 spirits sect. Those who could become the chosens of the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension were almost 1 in a million peerless geniuses. It was difficult for one to be born in a mainland. However, these chosens of the 5 spirits sect followed Little Emperor Yan with great respect. They treated the Little Emperor Yan as their leader. Little Emperor Yan was also the leader of the 5 spirits sect's chosens. It was no wonder that this person could lead countless unruly geniuses. His strength was much stronger than Mu Lin's. Mu Lin's strength was only at the peak of 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu's. However, the Little Emperor Yan's strength was comparable to that of 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu's. The difference was countless times. Little Emperor Yan's senior brother, I was just about to leave the valley and happened to meet Brother Chu. Therefore, I brought him here to introduce him to you. Yan Hanshi hurriedly explained when he heard Little Emperor Yan's question. This is the Brother Chu that I mentioned before. He once saved our lives, Holy Dragon Sect's chosen Chu Fengmian. Holy Dragon Sect's Chu Fengmian? When the Little Emperor Yan heard Yan Hanshi's words, he sized up Chu Fengmian. His eyes immediately revealed some contempt. This is the Holy Dragon Sect. It is said that the genius who appeared out of nowhere is not inferior to Yun Zun. I don't think there is anything special about him. He is just a little guy that the people of the Holy Dragon Sect deliberately created. The Little Emperor Yan did not hide the sarcasm in his words. Chu Fengmian frowned when he heard that. He could also tell that this Little Emperor Yan was most likely a lawless person. He was arrogant and unreasonable. When he saw that Chu Fengmian's aura was not strong, he did not take Chu Fengmian seriously. Chapter 1603. Little Emperor Yan was originally a peerless genius in the Sacred Dragon Mystery Dimension. Furthermore, he had obtained the inheritance of power and was extremely arrogant. The power of the bloodline in Chu Fengmian's body was usually in a deep sleep. Hence, Chu Fengmian looked no different from an ordinary 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. He did not expect to be looked down upon by this Little Emperor Yan. You are Chu Fengmian. I was just about to look for you. Boy, I heard that you were the one who ruined the marriage between our 5 spirits sect and Qi Linshan? Chu Fengmian's expression was unfriendly. Suddenly, the 5 spirits sect's holy son, who was standing behind Little Emperor Yan, walked out and questioned Chu Fengmian. What happened? Little Emperor Yan heard the 5 spirits sect's holy son's words and turned his head to ask. Jin Tong, what is going on? Reporting to Senior Little Emperor Yan, our 5 spirits sect's junior sister Luo, she was supposed to marry young Master Lin Lai of Qi Linshan. Young Master Lin Lai is the holy son of Qi Linshan, a genius of the generation. The marriage between junior sister Luo Shi and him was a match made in heaven. However, this matter was ruined by this person. Jin Tong said respectfully. This matter has also caused our 5 spirits sect to become enemies with Qi Linshan. The impact is great. I originally wanted to settle the score with this person. Today, I will let Senior Little Emperor Yan uphold justice. Since when did the Holy Dragon Sect's holy son have the right to interfere in our 5 spirits sect's internal affairs? Little Emperor Yan heard Jin Tong's words and looked at Chu Fengmian with hostility. Mu Lin, that trash. He was supposed to be in charge of this matter. In the end, he made such a mistake? Damn it. Senior Little Emperor Yan, junior sister Luo, she was originally Brother Chu's cultivation companion. Moreover, junior sister Luo she was unwilling, so senior brother Mu Lin agreed to cancel the marriage. Yan Hanshi heard little Emperor Yan's words and hurriedly said, "What a joke! Cultivation companion? Junior sister Luo she has joined our Five Spirits sect for so long, but I have never heard of her having a cultivation companion." Jin Tong snorted coldly when he heard Yan Hanshi's words. "From what I can see, it's clearly Mu Lin and this brat working together to ruin the plans of our Five Spirits sect. Kid, how long have you been in the Holy Dragon Mystery Domain? You've made the Holy Dragon Mystery Realm so quiet. Looks like you must be a spy from the outside world." After Jin Tong finished, he hurriedly looked at little Emperor Yen and said, "Senior brother little Emperor Yen, please give me the order to capture this person and send him to the Avalon of Five Elements. This will help resolve the misunderstanding between the Avalon of Five Elements and the Five Spirits sect." As Jin Tong spoke, the aura of spiritual power emanated from his body. His strength had almost reached the peak of the Eight Tribulations Emperor Gu. He was incomparably tyrannical. He stared at Chu Fengmian with unfriendly eyes. This matter is indeed a little strange. However, our Five Spirits sect and the Avalon of Five Elements have been on good terms for generations. We should not spoil our plans because of this matter. Upon hearing Jin Tong's words, little Emperor Yen nodded. He immediately looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, "Chu Fengmian, I don't care if your junior sister Luo she's cultivation partner. Even if you are, as a disciple of our Five Spirits sect, junior sister Luo she's marriage is not up to her to decide. Since she's going to marry someone from the Avalon of Five Elements, even if she doesn't marry Lin Lai, she has to marry another saint. As for you, you've ruined the plans of our Five Spirits sect. Today I'll give you a chance. Kneel down and admit your mistake. When I bring you to the Avalon of Five Elements to repent for your sins, I won't cripple your cultivation." As little Emperor Yen spoke, he was like a high and mighty emperor who had everything under his control. He was incomparably domineering, as if everyone's life and death were in his hands and under his control. "Repent for your sins? Luo Shi is my cultivation partner. You actually dare to let her marry someone else? Looks like you're tired of living." Upon hearing little Emperor Yan's words, Chu Fengmian laughed out of extreme anger. His laughter was extremely cold. "Arrogant? We're tired of living? Brat, you're really arrogant. Even if Qingmeng were here, she wouldn't dare to speak to little Emperor Yen like this. Who do you think you are?" Jin Tong's face was gloomy and cold. Upon hearing Chu Fengmian's words, he was incomparably furious. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to actually dare to disobey little Emperor Yen. "Little Emperor Yen, senior brother didn't cripple your cultivation because we're from the same sect. I gave you a chance to live. I didn't expect you to be so unappreciative. Today, I'll first capture you and cripple your cultivation. Then, I'll bring you to the Avalon of Five Elements to repent for your sins." As he spoke, Jin Tong suddenly made his move. In the palm of his hand, rays of golden light condensed and suddenly shot towards Chu Fengmian. These rays of golden light appeared in the sky and condensed into a bronze pagoda. Suddenly, it suppressed Chu Fengmian. The surrounding space was condensed and suppressed as the bronze pagoda fell. Obviously, this was an extremely powerful suppression technique. When Yan Hanshi saw this, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. He hurriedly opened his mouth and said, "Brother Chu, be careful. This is our Five Spirits sect's secret suppression technique. You can't resist it head-on. Gotcha." However, before Yan Hanshi's voice died away, Chu Fengmian's body rushed up to the sky. In the face of the bronze pagoda that was suppressing him, Chu Fengmian didn't escape. Instead, he rose into the sky and suddenly bombarded the bronze pagoda with his palm. "You're courting death." Seeing Chu Fengmian's action, Jin Tong's eyes revealed some disdain. Once his bronze pagoda fell, the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu would be suppressed for a while. As for the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, there was no suspense. As long as Chu Fengmian was in the eye of the formation, Jin Tong's attack was enough to cripple Chu Fengmian's cultivation. However, just as a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, as Chu Fengmian's body approached the bronze pagoda, Jin Tong's expression suddenly froze. Chu Fengmian struck the bronze pagoda with his palm. It was just a simple palm, not any martial technique at all. The moment the palm hit the bronze pagoda suddenly shook violently. Immediately, countless cracks appeared on its surface. In the next moment, the bronze pagoda suddenly shattered in the air and turned into a pile of powder. It immediately disappeared in the air, without a trace remaining. What? The bronze pagoda is our 5 spirits sect's most powerful suppression technique. It is invincible in the same realm. It is said that senior brother Jin Tong once used this bronze pagoda to suppress the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu for 3 breaths of time. How could it be broken so easily? This person didn't even use a spiritual weapon. He broke it with brute force? How tyrannical is his strength? I once heard that this person was a genius comparable to Yun Zun. I didn't expect him to be so powerful. Chapter 1604. The 5 spirits sects chosen had heard of Chu Fengmian's reputation before. Even if the 5 spirits sect's holy sons hadn't been in the sacred dragon's secret domain before, the news of Chu Fengmian destroying the Law Enforcement Hall and Myriad Sword Hall had already spread throughout the entire Daluotian star field. Not many people had seen Chu Fengmian, but most of the Emperor Gu of the Daluo star field had heard of his name. However, the 5 spirits sects chosen had only scoffed at the various rumors. Not many people believed them. Seeing the bronze pagoda being destroyed, the 5 spirits sects chosen had finally believed the rumors about Chu Fengmian. However, there was still no panic on their faces. Instead, they looked at Chu Fengmian with a sneer. Jin Tong was a famous genius in the 5 spirits sect, so his strength was naturally not limited to this. You can actually withstand the bronze pagoda? It seems that your reputation isn't completely undeserved. Jin Tong looked at Chu Fengmian and slowly said, However, this move is only half of my strength. Half of your strength? It seems that the chosen of the 5 spirits sect is nothing. I only use 10% of my strength. Chu Fengmian looked at Jin Tong and revealed a disdainful smile. With your strength, you dare to force Luoxi to marry someone else? Little bastard, you deserve to die. Boom. When Jin Tong heard Chu Fengmian's words, his anger reached its peak. An incomparably cruel smile appeared on his face. From behind him, rays of golden light flew out. These rays of golden light were formed from pure gold spiritual energy. They emerged and turned into golden threads in front of Jin Tong. Each golden thread was formed from incomparably pure gold spiritual energy. Although they were small, the sharpness contained within them was much sharper than the blade of a heaven-grade spiritual artifact. End of the sky and destroy the earth. Senior brother Jin Tong is really angry. This kid is finished. No 8th tribulation Emperor Gu can withstand this move. Even little Emperor Yen didn't dare to take it head-on. Instead, he defeated senior brother Jin Tong before he used this move. Seeing the countless golden threads in front of Jin Tong, the group of 5 spirits sects chosen looked at Chu Fengmian as if he was a dead man. By the side, Yen Hanxi's expression abruptly changed as his face turned ashen. He clearly knew how powerful this move was. This move, end the heavens, destroy the earth, once used, was almost unbreakable and invincible. Little bastard, die. At the moment when the countless golden threads condensed, Jin Tong stared at Chu Fengmian, his eyes filled with endless killing intent. Buzz. Countless golden threads intertwined to form an inescapable net that enveloped Chu Fengmian in all directions. Countless golden threads began to shroud and shrink, cutting Chu Fengmian's body. Every golden thread was as sharp as a heaven-grade spiritual artifact. Once touched, one would either die or be injured. It was definitely a killer move. This kid is definitely going to die. He's courting death by provoking senior brother Jin Tong. Seeing the golden threads shrink, the 5 spirits sex chosen, who were standing behind little Emperor Yen, discussed with each other. They were too lazy to watch the battle. Countless golden threads began to shrink. Chu Fengmian didn't even have the chance to dodge. He could only choose to take it head-on. How could an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu withstand the cutting of countless golden threads that were comparable to heaven-grade spiritual artifacts? Is that all? Just when everyone thought that Chu Fengmian was definitely going to die, Chu Fengmian suddenly took action. He looked at the countless shrinking golden threads in front of him and suddenly made a move. He reached out his hand and grabbed the golden threads. Is this kid courting death? Before he could say the word courting death, Chu Fengmian's palm had already grabbed the shrinking golden threads. These golden threads that were sharper than heaven-grade spiritual artifacts were suddenly pinched in Chu Fengmian's palm. All the golden threads were pinched in Chu Fengmian's palm with his bare hands. This scene was simply beyond the imagination of countless people. Even little Emperor Yan's eyes were filled with disbelief. He had fought with Jin Tong before and knew how powerful these golden threads were. However, these extremely sharp golden threads couldn't cut Chu Fengmian's skin at all when they were pinched in Chu Fengmian's palm. There wasn't a single mark left on Chu Fengmian's palm. If someone were to observe closely, they would discover that Chu Fengmian's palm wasn't the color of flesh and blood, but the color of a crystal-clear jade. These golden threads couldn't leave a single mark on Chu Fengmian's palm. With my physical body, 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu won't be able to break it even if he uses all his strength. Chu Fengmian was very satisfied with this result. The golden threads that Jin Tong shot out were almost the strongest attack of 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu, excluding geniuses like little Emperor Yen who had inherited power. However, it still couldn't shake Chu Fengmian's physical body. This was enough to prove the strength of Chu Fengmian's physical body. Break. After getting a satisfactory result, Chu Fengmian didn't want to waste any more time with Jin Tong. In Chu Fengmian's eyes, Jin Tong was just an ant. However, this ant was the culprit who had forced Luo Shi to marry Qi Linshan. Chu Fengmian certainly wouldn't let him off easily. Chu Fengmian suddenly exerted force in his palm. Countless golden threads were pulled up by Chu Fengmian, and then all of them were broken. The all-encompassing net formed by the golden threads was broken by Chu Fengmian with a single grab. Die. Chu Fengmian's gaze was fixed on Jin Tong. Suddenly, he attacked. A palm fell from the sky, enveloping this part of the world. It fell from the sky and pressed on Jin Tong's body. The spiritual power on Jin Tong's body couldn't withstand the power of Chu Fengmian's palm. With a sudden slap, Jin Tong's muscles and bones were broken. He suddenly lay on the ground and spat out a large amount of blood essence. Jin Tong, who was extremely arrogant just a moment ago, lay on the ground in the blink of an eye. He was as miserable as a dead dog. This scene deeply stimulated the countless 5 spirits, sex holy sons present. Senior brother Jin Tong was defeated. How strong is Chu Fengmian? 9th Tribulation Emperor Gu? How is it possible? Isn't this person said to be a newcomer in the Holy Dragon sect? How can he be so terrifying? Many 5 spirits, sex holy sons kept rubbing their eyes. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Jin Tong was considered an expert among the countless 5 spirits, sex holy sons. His strength was no less than Mu Lin's. However, he was beaten so miserably by Chu Fengmian. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.